All right, it is now 6:05. I'd like to call the May 18, 2021 Student Achievement Meeting to order. Was all up to us.
Right.
If I can have a roll call, please.
Roll call.
Mr. McBride,
Here.
Mr. Riddle,
Here.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Callahan-Wozniak,
Here.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Present.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Here.
All right, thank you. We now have item 3A, the approval of the meeting minutes for April 20th, 2021.
I so move we approve those minutes.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Leguizamo. Any comments, corrections to the minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Callahan-Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Pass.
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. McBride.
Yes.
President Ewing.
Yes, minutes are approved. We have our discussion items. We are going to shift the agenda slightly. We can scroll down all the way to the bottom. Due to just timing, all the way to the bottom. All right, we're going to go to item 6B first, which is the CTE Innovation Grant.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, members of the board, community members. For this item, I'd ask Mr. Marshall Roots to come up, please. You can use that mic or this, whatever's more comfortable for you.
Yes, and just a reminder to the community who are present, you are able to ask questions. We do ask that you walk to the microphone, keep socially distanced if you are lining up. Before you start speaking, please let the microphone be sanitized. Just a reminder, this is our committee meeting. Therefore, the community is able to ask questions on the agenda topics as they come up. There's no public comment period, as the entire process gives the opportunity for the community to participate.
Good evening. Good evening. Marshall Reitz here. I'm the CTE coordinator for the high school. And what I wanted to present to you tonight is an opportunity that we've received from ISB this year. Well, really late last year. I was approached late 2020 about a possibility for a CTE innovation grant. What ISB was doing was taking some money from the Perkins grant, which is a national grant, and setting aside, yes ma'am.
Please tell me what the acronym CTE is.
Sure, it's Career and Technical Education.
Thank you.
So that is the new acronym for what used to be, what do they call it? Vocational ed. Okay. So what they were presenting to me was an opportunity for a grant, but they wanted a new program for our students. And usually when CTE departments do something like this, they're focusing on a certain career path or a certain industry. And I was brainstorming what I wanted to do with this grant. And as many of you know, I've been going out and talking to a lot of businesses over the last few years. And one of the things that I have heard repeatedly, it doesn't matter what industry it is, that it's great that we're training students with specific technical skills, but what they're finding across the board when new employees are coming in is they're lacking the basic employability skills. How to communicate effectively with an email, how to talk to a boss versus how to talk to a coworker, being to work on time and the importance of that. And again, it was across the board that I was hearing this. It's not just our students, it's every new employee coming in. So I contacted the folks at ISB about my idea of creating a semester class that would be available to all students here at the high school, because we all have to get jobs. And so it's not focusing on one career specifically, but all careers. And basically developing overtly, and I'm using that term on purpose, overtly teaching students these skills. A lot of times in our classrooms, we teach them covertly, and they really don't understand that they're learning those skills and that they're developing those skills. But if we teach it to them overtly, they know when they come into class, today I'm working on problem-solving skills, or today I'm working on communication skills. So I applied for the grant. The folks reviewing the grant said this is needed across the board, and they went ahead and approved it. So what we're doing, thank you. So what we're doing is we're partnering with Lake County Workforce Development, Lake County Partners, and CLC, because CLC offers a class similar to this. And what we want to do is create a semester class that would be an elective for all students in the high school. And then what it could do is teach them these skills, at least give them a semester of really working on these skills. I also want to include in this a chance for students to purposely explore careers that they would be interested in. We give them some time to do it, but they really need a lot more time to make the correct decisions. Okay? The other thing that ISB and I talked about was how we want to model it for other high school districts, as potentially moving to other districts, and also, once we get it established, to start bringing it down to the middle school level, because then we can start really building on those skills, maybe a class light, and then when they come to the high school, they develop their skills further. So if you can change to the next slide, what we're doing in the first year, and unfortunately because the grant was started late for the year, we didn't get approved until January, but we have January through August, and in that time right now we've completed 3 focus groups with industry leaders. We've had CEOs and HR managers on these focus groups, and they're all excited about what we're doing, and many of them had said that they would love to partner with us as we move forward with this and come in and talk to students or have our students go out to their businesses to visit. The other thing that we're going to do with some of the money is we're going to use the money for licenses for U-Science and NEPRIS. U-Science is an aptitude career matching tool. The students sit down, they do about 11 different brain games. It measures their aptitude, and it matches them to careers where those skills that they have would be successful. A lot of students, they only, when we do interest surveys, they only know what they know, and they can only be interested in what they know. And there are many, many different opportunities out there that they don't know. So we want to use the tool for that. And NEPRIS is a career exploration tool that ISB has partnered with. So because ISB is doing it, I figured I ought to do it. Okay? So we're currently writing the first draft of the curriculum. We're taking CLC's class and modeling after that class so that we can have it as a dual credit class. And the students can then earn credit for CLC at the same time. Okay? Then we're going to work on getting some tables and chairs. I want to get rid of the desks, because when you go into a conference room, you don't have desks, you have conference rooms. Okay? I want to have the same kind of replicate the environment. And then this one is key. We want to hire a work-based learning coordinator. This person would be responsible for going out and developing the relationships with the local businesses to make the networking, to have the students be able to go out and visit businesses, schedule those visits. So this person would be purposely looking at having our students be in the workplace. Okay? Next slide. So this is a 3-year grant. It's about $100K a year. Next year we want to pilot it using our co-op class. Then we want to get more into purchasing the technology that will be used in the class, computers, that kind of stuff. And then really have the work-based learning coordinator develop that support network. That would really be the time that they're really working on the network. Okay? And then the last year would be the first year of implementation. begin it with juniors and seniors, and then possibly, again, extend the role that the workplace coordinator or learning coordinator would be. So this is an opportunity I think is great for all of our students, and not only that, it satisfies a need in the workforce and what I've heard from our community that they really need. So that's my spiel today. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Are the students that you're going to be targeting for this program, are they at grade level reading?
I'm not as concerned about whether they're a grade level reading because, my purpose is getting them jobs, and I want them to develop the skills necessary for getting those jobs, and that's what this class will be focusing on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Comment and a question. So I want to commend you, first of all, for creating this because I think it's something that students will benefit from, and I agree. I think everyone going out of graduation or out of high school, they need a job. We have a lot of skills. We can leverage that in different workspaces. But is the grant sustainable? What happens after the 3 years?
I'm kind of sneaky.
Okay.
Okay. One of the things that I think what will happen is once you see, the only thing that we'll have to extend after the grant is the work-based learning coordinator. Okay? But once you see the value of a work-based learning coordinator in a high school, I think that it'll be something that you're going to be more than willing to invest in. Because when you see the opportunities that the students get, I have taken students to different businesses in the community. When they get on the bus, after being at those locations, the chatter between the students is unbelievable. Because many of them, this is the first time they have seen an environment like that outside of their community. When I've taken them to Pfizer, when I've taken them to Allstate, I took them to Walgreens downtown Chicago. They saw a professional environment with people working in it that looked like them and interfaced with them. That impact is so huge that I think you'll find that that one thing that I snuck into here is going to be very valuable. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to walk to the microphone, this one over here, please.
I just want to know, to get a job, you have to know how to read, right? You have to fill out an application before you get a job, right? You got to know what you're filling out.
Well, one of the things that we will be working, part of the curriculum will be filling out a resume, completing a resume, how to complete applications, those kind of things, to show the importance of that as well. Okay? So that will be included in the curriculum.
Yeah, thank you. Commend you for the work that you're doing. As someone who hires, right, I can attest to that fact, what businesses are looking for. And that's always what they say is you hire for technical skills, but you usually let people go due to those soft skills, right?
Yep.
Can they show up on time? Can they get along with their coworkers? How do they deal with conflict from either customers or supervisors? So appreciate the work that you're doing. Happy that you went after the grant, and commend you for your success. So
Thank you very much. Thank
Have
you.
a great one.
I'd just like to take 1 minute to acknowledge the years of service that Marshall has given to the district. I know that there'll be something forthcoming, but I wanted to take a moment to just say thank you for everything that you do, for going above and beyond, and for the dedication and service that you've given to the students, the families of the Waukegan Public School District. So Thank you. Thank you, Marshall. Thank you. We're going to go to the summer school. Is that okay?
Okay. So we're going to go back up to item 4A, which is the summer programming.
Okay, so right now we're just going to give you an overview of our summer programming. This year was a little bit different than past years, not only because of the pandemic, but because of the approach that we've taken. What we've done is we've decided to really provide a local, give the schools an opportunity to show their local interest and create proposals where they would submit those to the team. They were reviewed by the area superintendents, reviewed by the ASAP team, and then feedback was provided, and then there was ultimately approval. What you'll see is that there are three components that we wanted interwoven throughout all of them, all of the summer programming at all grade bands, and that is that there are experiences outside of the classroom walls. So opportunities to have field trips, and virtual or in person, in alignment with whatever the guidelines are. And then an opportunity for students to hear from a guest speaker or have a presentation from the community, from a community member or an interest from the community. And then the third area is something that actually Marshall just talked about, and really that was about executive functioning skills. And to varying degrees, from pre-K all the way up through high school, really teaching these explicitly for a period of time over each week. And it's really important that we get back to this. That's some of the feedback that we received, was that the organization and just the real need to really teach these skills discreetly rather than embedded within the curricula, just being explicit about organizational skills, time management, and those things. So those are three themes that you'll see interwoven throughout all of these proposals. And if we go to the next slide, please. The other thing that we wanted to do is I mentioned this community element. So we did. I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Joe Young, and we were talking from really about January up until the present time, talking about some ideas in programming, and this idea of having these components in there, executive functioning, the field trips, and presentations and guest speakers weekly, really helped with this partnership here, and having a bridge to the community, showcasing and highlighting Waukegan's best, and really trying to have a connection to the community, bringing the community into the classroom, and really showing that the classroom is really beyond the four walls as well. So that was another component to this. So I am going to let the area superintendents discuss the elementary, middle school, and high school options here. Amanda, do you want to do the elementary, please? It's up to both of you, whatever you want to do.
Right, they have it. So you start, Ms. Patty.
Go ahead.
Here, is this one on? Okay. Sorry. Good evening. We are glad to be able to present tonight some of the planning that our elementary school principals have mapped out so far connected to summer school. We wanted every elementary school to be able to be utilized. However, with capital improvement projects happening at several of our sites, we did have to partner up some of our elementary schools. And so we have 9 sites that will be utilized over the summer.
You can slow down just a little bit. Some of the board members are having a hard time hearing. And if we can get the monitor up slightly on the stage if we don't get feedback. All right, go ahead, Ms. Patty.
Okay. Good evening again. We are happy tonight to be able to share with you the work of our elementary school team, working on the logistical pieces and the programs from the elementary level. There are going to be some capital improvement projects occurring over the summer, and so we had to combine some of our school sites in order to make sure that the operations team was able to still complete the work in a timely manner for our summer projects. And so on the screen, you can see the list of 9 sites that we'll be utilizing over the summer to have summer school. So the first group that you see is an example. Clearview will be hosting the summer school program for students who will attend Clearview at Oakdale and McCall. And we also have another example. Glen Flora will be housing the summer school program for students who attend Glen Flora, Glenwood, and Greenwood. Each school will be offering programming from June 14th through July 8th. It's a Monday through Thursday program from 8 until noon. We will be providing breakfast when they arrive, lunch when they go home, and transportation for students who are eligible to receive transportation. Each school developed a proposal centered around a program theme. And for example, this one is the Washington and North Elementary program. They have a lot of sports and games elements for their theme, and they are also collaborating with the United Way of Lake County, and they are doing lessons around play and pretending and painting, really trying to make sure that in addition to the literacy and math skills, that we're also making it an engaging experience for students. And so as you can see, each of the programs listed through the next few slides, there are notes on their theme and some additional exciting elements that each of the programs offer. We are still mapping out and fine-tuning a location for our pre-K program, which is led by our pre-K coordinator, Ms. Krisha Rasul. And so we'll also be having a pre-K program for our students who have been attending pre-K, will still be in pre-K, so that we have a summer opportunity for them as well. You can see some of the themes and next steps, exciting elements for Carmen, Clark, and Whittier. Really project-based learning, a lot of field day experiences, a lot of projects, and a lot of camp types of activities.
We can move into the middle school one, please. And I'm going to ask Area Superintendent Sheena Keelan to speak to the middle school, please.
Sorry, Ms. Keelan, before you start, if they could sanitize the microphone, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Same logistics for middle school. We did the same type of proposal process. We have the same dates and days of the week and times. Yeah, move up. So our middle schools work very collaboratively together all of the time, and so you'll see throughout the 5 middle schools they have very similar themes and very similar exciting elements as you look through these, but really about exploring the history and diversity of our community. And with the partnership with Joe Young, they're really excited to do that work as well. You can see some of the exact same questions there. So they worked very collaboratively together. So the 5 middle schools will be very similar in nature. You can go up to the last one.
All right, thank you. And you're going to see that high school is structured a little differently, but it still has those three common themes of, I don't know, are we taking questions now or waiting till the end?
I'm sorry, Ms. Vukovic, if you would hold it until we finish the presentation, same with the board. There are only a few more slides left, so I appreciate your patience.
Thanks. So high school holds with those same 3 ideas of offering really executive functioning skills, offering a field trip, and then presentation guest speaker. The major difference here is that it is long. It's 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks. It's the main focus here is credit recovery, and we offered some flexibility in terms of offering 2 sessions, an AM and a PM. I'm going to let Miss Amanda Patty, do you have anything else you want to add to that? No, okay. Next slide then. Again, here's an example of the courses that are offered. You can see there are quite a few because again, this is credit recovery, and we're also offering those other added benefits for students. Another component to our summer school programming, or our summer programming rather, is move up to middle school and freshman orientation days. So I'm going to let Ms. Shani Keelan speak to the move up to middle, and then Amanda Patty will talk about freshman orientation days.
Hi again. So we're working really collaboratively, and this is really starting to fold out and get some exact dates and things set in place. But we're going to offer our 5th graders going into 6th grade an orientation week, couple days, maybe 2-3 days, to come in and really learn what it's like to be in their new building, so they can learn how to open their locker and go through their schedule a few times and meet their teachers and do some fun team building activities. So this is a really exciting opportunity we've been working on. We tried to move things forward last year, but we had a little COVID issue, but we're really excited about this year.
Thank you. Ms. Patty, do you want to speak briefly about the freshman orientation?
So similar to the middle school orientation, we will be inviting our incoming freshmen back to come and visit Brookside campus for the first time in their high school career. They will have a week-long opportunity where we not only engage the students in opportunities during the day for learning the layout of this much bigger building, learning who their freshman seminar teacher is, meeting with fine arts and PE, kind of seeing what clubs are available for them to connect with, making sure that they get an orientation to some of their core classes so they can understand the syllabus and the expectations of some of their classwork, as well as see some cool things that might happen in their classroom. So we were talking about a physics demonstration where they could see, physics with doing some marble racing, right? So trying to really make it engaging and hands-on, as well as an opportunity for them to reconnect with some students that they may not have seen for over a year and establish some relationships with some adults in the building before they come to school, as well as learn their schedule, walk their classes, learn the building. We also are providing some opportunities for parents to come in. We'll have a Calendly appointment opportunity for parents to sign up for tours, guided tours of the building, as well as a parent orientation. And so in addition to the students getting an orientation, we also want to make sure our families are aware of the high school expectations, are aware of what credits mean, are aware of how to monitor those credits, etc.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Lisa Ambrosio to come and speak regarding the Newcomer Program, and then Dr. Greg Bublitz, who will discuss ESY briefly.
And just because there may spark other questions, after Ms. Ambrosio, Mrs. Sari will ask for us to pause to take questions.
Sure.
And then we'll hear from Dr. Bublitz and
Sure.
questions on that portion of the presentation. Ms. Ambrosio.
Thank you. Good evening, Board, Community, and Superintendent Placencia. Could you please advance the slide one? Thank you so much. So the Newcomers Program, ideally, we would like to have one teacher at each elementary site to offer our Newcomer Program, which is above and beyond the regular summer school program that we provide. For our immigrant students, those are the students that come to us that are between 0 and 3 years new to the country. The program will also be offered at Jefferson Middle School and Brookside campus. And the students will be using multiple resources to provide intense English instruction in the areas of literacy and numeracy, as well as acculturation for students who have recently arrived into the United States.
We're going to take a pause right now. So, Board President.
Ms. Vukovic, you had a question, and then Ms. Hannah.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak has a question too afterwards.
Great, yeah. I really like the middle and high school plan because I really think all that's important since they've been out of school for a year. The elementary has me concerned. I know it sounds like a lot of it's going to be sort of like camp sort of things, at least that's what they said. But I'm wondering, is there any plan to do any diagnostic testing for the readers to find out where their deficits are for some of the kids that possibly, maybe their teacher this year recommended them for summer school. Is there some sort of plan for at least using those 4 weeks? Is it 4 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, are there going to be reading specialists there that can pull out the kids and give them some sort of so you can get a read on where they are, so when they come back in the fall, especially the K-1-2 kids, I mean, the K that are going to first. I understand the new kindergartners, that's a different story, but the other grades, I really feel like it's important because they had a whole year of learning loss that we've all talked about, that there's something more than camp days. I mean, if you've got a half day of school, that should all be pretty much reading and math.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, but we also have to remember that, and that is going to be a part of it. So all the curriculum that we're going to use is going to be tied to the curriculum that we use during the year. So there will be some assessing done so that we can get a baseline of where the students are at. In terms of hiring folks, we're bringing in as many teachers and paras that we can bring in so that we can have a smaller student to teacher ratio to focus, like you just said. In terms of, that 4 hours and the learning outside of the four walls, those activities, especially the field trips should be aligned to the curriculum, right? So it should be relevant and it should be in sequence with what they're currently learning. We also have to remember the SEL side of this is that they haven't been in a classroom. Many of them have not been in a classroom for a long time. So I think to go from just having a little bit more flexibility to going all in for 4 hours straight, especially in the summer, would be really difficult. And so we wanted to kind of scaffold, if you will, give them some time to get into this, and then also focus on those executive functioning skills, because that was a big piece that we heard at all levels, actually. Just the time management, organizational skills. It became much more apparent when students were, for the most part, really independent and having to be responsible for getting online and keeping their, their assignments and their things in order. So to your point about using the screeners, that's not only is that part of this plan in the summer to really assess students when they're coming in, but it's also going to be a part of what we're doing in the fall. Because we need to know where they're at and how to work accordingly. I'm meeting with another group next week to focus on the primary. This group works. They scaffold up too. They start with kindergarten, phonics. It's a phonics-based program that works with kindergarten, every kindergarten class in the district, and then they scaffold up to first grade. So then they'll have both grades, so that the goal is that ultimately that they're reading by the end of first grade. And so that's part of the efforts too, but it's in line with what we're doing right now.
I mean, there seemed, for me at least, always teaching primary, if you're taking a field trip somewhere, it's getting on the bus, lining everybody up. You're using a big chunk of that 4-hour day when you could do something, a recess out. I understand they're not going to sit. I mean, they can't even during the school year sit for 4 straight hours. Yeah. But you go outside for recess for 20 minutes and then come back in, or you go out and do, some sort of a field day type short activity, and then you get back in the building. That to me, if we've got extra money from the COVID money to actually offer a full summer school, to me, especially this year, it should be spent on support staff to come in, and at least the kids that are, very, very much struggling have 4 weeks this summer to at least we get an idea of, okay, this one definitely is going to need reading support next fall. Those kind of things. That's my biggest concern is time wasted, and I hate to say wasted because I loved field trips and I know the kids do, but when you're doing a summer school time, and that's going to take up a lot of time.
So, and I totally understand what you're saying, and I just want to go back to the piece that it's connected to the learning that's happening in the classroom. And you're right, it does take time to get kids on and off a bus and transitioning to different places. But I also, and as did the team, I didn't just, come up with this on my own. We looked at other models, we looked at other examples, we consulted with other folks. Part of this too, the field experience doesn't necessarily mean that they're going someplace. It could be in the school environment. It could be a part of the day. I will take note of your concern regarding the time, but I just do also want to just express with you too that there's a social emotional component to this too. And some of our students have not been around other children. So having this ability to go out and go someplace other than their backyard or their living room, I think is also important too. And so that's where I'm at. I understand the learning loss, but at the same time, I looked at it as a parent, I looked at it as an educator, and I would want a little bit of balance for the kids, and that's the approach. Thank you.
Anna, and then Ms. Wozniak.
Okay, in reference to the high school, and you talked about credit recovery. Are there credit recovery classes for the seniors that were missing credits for this year? Were they put on, given the Edmon, is that what it is? Edmentum, so that they could recover credits?
So there's a combination of things that we're using. Edmentum is one of those things. Amanda, if you want to, yeah. I mean, so we are going to have teachers that are live and in person. We're also going to use Edmentum. We're also going to use Elevate. And in a previous meeting, talked about doing whatever it took to make sure that these students could make up these credits. This pandemic has been is very difficult on the students. So right now we're trying to do what we can to help them make up those credits.
So there's classes that are going on now for the seniors?
Yes. Amanda, do you want to?
Okay, sorry, hi. So yes, there are seniors who, in spite of all of the efforts made to engage them in their coursework or to help them try to push through the last remaining courses that they may have needed to graduate, still had credit recovery needs to get them over that threshold of having the appropriate amount of credits. And so there are seniors at AOEC and at Washington campus who are still enrolled and actively working on classwork and coursework, doing makeup work, makeup tests, redo work for their teachers. Some of that is potentially through Edmentum. Some of it is through classwork that their teachers have assigned. And we are working diligently, letting kids know that they need to keep working. Don't stop working just because graduation is tomorrow and you might not have made that mark yet. Keep working. Keep reaching out to your teacher. Keep working with your counselor. Keep working with your administrative staff. Find out what else you still need to do. Find out what else you still have left. And we still want them to know that they can be completing work and productive and engaged in the learning between now, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way up through. And then they will be able to participate upon completion of their credits at our July ceremony. And so we are messaging to our seniors at both campuses that we don't want them to stop, we don't want them to give up, and we want them to keep pushing forward and let us know how we can assist with any makeup opportunities that they may need.
So is there a maximum or a minimum number of credits that a student has to have in order to get into the credit recovery as a senior?
Any student who has not met the 17.5 board-approved graduation requirements are our top priority to get into summer school. So if they're missing a half a credit, 1 credit, 2 credits, etc., we want all students, especially our graduating seniors, to have first-come seats and priority in our summer school classrooms.
I'll follow up. So there's, even on the slides, there's recoup up to 2 credits. So I know when we do Edmentum, one of the things that the board liked and why we continue to use them is because it allows students to...
Sure, so that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. I apologize for not clarifying that. Should a student not respond well to Edmentum, we know that some students don't respond well to online learning platforms, and they respond well to more traditional-based curriculum. We have mapped out our units of instruction with the teaching and learning team, where they would have 3 weeks. For the first 3 weeks would be spent in one class. The second 3 weeks could be spent in another class. If they can take 2 classes simultaneously, then they would have 2 classes in June and 2 classes in July. Each class is worth half a credit. And so if they're in a traditional type of curriculum, they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't have the pacing enough to be able to get more than 2 credits if they were in a traditional model classroom. However, if they were in an Edmentum platform and they were able to keep up on the pacing and the work, there is potential that they could receive additional credits depending on how much credits they needed, how many courses they were assigned, and just how much work they were willing to crank out and spend time in.
So did you find out anything about that? Can I ask?
I wouldn't ask about a specific student.
You can afterwards.
So one of the concerns was a parent or parents reaching out or being told that there wasn't an opportunity for their students to catch up on credits. And so Ms. Hannah has emailed the concern about that, and I know Ms. Patty will be looking into that specific student situation.
Please let me know the situation, and I'll look into it right away with the transcripts, the counselors, the courses they may need, and we'll look at summer school opportunities right away. Please let me know what that situation is.
Yes, and I think part of it was the communication too, is the student, obviously, or students, some students are more than 2 credits behind. And so if they haven't been enrolled into that Edmentum program or a more, where they are able to accomplish more credits, is the distance may be a lot further than they want to be.
Okay, we can definitely look into any student who may have a concern of not being eligible or feeling that they won't be able to participate in summer programming. We were happy to readdress any concerns that anyone has.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to, Ms. Wozniak, then Mr. Riddle, and then I do want to keep going with the presentation. So Ms. Wozniak?
So you're combining all these elementary schools. Are we busing these children from these?
Correct. So if a, for example, if we are having Oakdale and McCall attend at Clearview, if they were an Oakdale or a McCall student who signs up for summer school, even though they might not receive a bus because they live across the street from Oakdale, because they have to be transported to Clearview because that's where the program is, yes, we are working with transportation to provide transportation for students outside of their typical school to make sure that they can attend the summer school site.
Okay, and we're going to make some COVID accommodations for the busing system again?
Right now we have, working with Mr. Moten, if he's here, he can probably speak to it if he'd like to, of course. But we do have,
just making sure.
We have they have increased ridership to 20 people per bus instead of the 15, and so we do have a little bit more flexibility in terms of routes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, my question is whether or not you're going to allow kids to take any of these summer classes remotely. My big concern would be that you're not going to let that happen, because it seems to me your teachers have had a difficult time doing hybrid, with students in the classroom and then those that are remote. So that's my question. Are you going to allow parents feel that they don't want to send their child in person for 4 weeks? Will you allow that? Have you?
We have not worked through any final plans to allow that, but I know that our main goal is to have all summer school be in person.
Good.
So that way they can receive the benefits of having instruction with their teacher in front of them.
Right. Thank you.
It's designed to be full in person.
Right. Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Thank you, Board President. So this is around the elementary programming. What I noticed in there, and this is more of a statement because this is a concern for me, it talks about each grade level will focus on how the student and their family fits in the community. Anytime that I see some sort of curriculum around family tree or family situations, I'm very concerned and sensitive around that, especially around this time where many of our families had lost a lot of family. So I just want to express the concern around that curriculum, that there may be a lot of sensitivity, especially around now, on that type of topic. I understand it's a way to try to connect our students to the community, but right now, family dynamics conversation is a very sensitive topic.
Sure.
So wanted to express that.
Yeah, we'll review that. I want to speak to the curriculum piece, though. As I had mentioned earlier when Ms. Vukovic asked the question, the content is aligned to the curriculum, that our core curriculum that we have here. So it's ReadyGen, those are everyday math. Those are the programs. That's the core of the curriculum. The theme that you mentioned, we can definitely look into the specifics of that. And we'll do either of the area soups have any greater details? I know from what you're saying and looking at the topic that it could be. We can follow up with you and actually look into it and then send an email through Nick to the board regarding that concern, okay?
Yeah, definitely. Like
Sure.
even like family tree stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think right now it's just very sensitive.
Sure. Yes, most definitely.
Might be good at other times,
Yeah.
but
We definitely don't want to add to any kind of trauma. So we'll look into that and dive a little deeper to the specifics, and then send some information to Nick that he can distribute to the board regarding that question, Ms. Leguizamo.
thank you for that.
Sure.
And the other thing that I've been hearing is high schoolers that are graduating this year are wanting to take driver's ed classes. And I know it's not the norm for us, and I understand that those students could be of age and go and get private lessons, but a lot of them feel more comfortable here in a school setting and trying to learn their driver's ed program. So it's just something I know from a high school perspective that there is interest from high school students that are graduates of this year, already 18, that they would still like to come back maybe over the summer and take that driver's ed course. I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure, and we are going to have driver's ed this summer, and I think, just like you said, I think we do have an abundance of students that will be taking it this summer. We can see what we can do to accommodate those graduates, and if there's interest specifically that you know of, then have them send their names to us or directly to me, and then we'll see what we can do, okay?
Okay, so if there's any families out there that are listening on via online as well, they can email, if you wanted to say your email into the online feature, and they can send an email to that person for
Sure.
that feature. Thank you.
Yeah, you can send it to ecesario@wps60.org. And we'll follow up. There's no guarantees. I can't, because, again, there is an abundance of students that will be taking because we didn't have that option last year. But if there is space and we can accommodate, then we'll see what we can do.
Sounds good. Those were all my questions. Thank you, Board President.
Thank you.
We just have Greg Bublitz on the next
Dr.
slide.
Bublitz, if you would like to come up and complete this presentation.
All right, good evening, School Board and Superintendent. So a quick note before we go into the extended school year talk. All students with IEPs, whether they qualify for ESY or extended school year, do have the opportunity to go to summer programming. And if it's an IEP need for their accommodations, modifications, or otherwise for them to access summer programming, we do have to support that. And of course, we want to support that so they can get so they can participate as well. So this is the IDEA, special ed law, and so extended school year, or ESY, it's intentional. It's not meant to be summer school. And so as you look into some of the highlighted pieces, it's really about services that are individualized to a child's needs, specific to them, based on called regression and recoupment. So after a break, if most students will have regression and recoupment, and some students have greater regression, and it takes them much longer time as compared to their peers. So this is the first piece of data that we do to see if a student qualifies for extended school year. And you'll see the word FAPE, free appropriate public education. That's a special ed term. Okay. So once they're eligible, they can go to ESY. And we're doing something a little different this year. Traditionally, ESY is a separate school. It's often a special ed school where students who may become eligible may not have the same access to the least restrictive environment. And so with this opportunity we have this summer to increase summer programming, we're taking it upon ourselves, challenging ourselves to provide ESY integrated into the summer programming. Some students will remain in the special ed room, such as our low incidence for autism or cognitive disabilities. But some of those other students who often have an opportunity to have classes in the general education or could benefit, this is a great opportunity to receive IEP services to address that regression and recoupment, have access to the core curriculum, right, that we're providing through summer programming, and have DL teachers and other interventionists available to give them supports based on their IEP and possibly in addition to their IEP. So one of the weirder things that you might think of in ESY is that it's not meant for growth, it's meant to address regression and recoupment. We may get some growth, that would be awesome. But we're doing it a little bit different in the spirit of inclusion, core curriculum, and being able to be with their peers and possibly in the same school. Obviously, some schools are partnering. Okay, I think that's it. Questions?
Go ahead, Ms. Allen.
So all of this that you have laid out for us, all of this is not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's all in compliance with their IEPs.
Yes, it is. We have about 250 students out of our around 2,400 students with IEPs who are eligible for these services. So it is compliant with the IEP, and there's data that the teams look at from vacations and breaks to see how their ability to retain those skills are. And that's the criteria we use. We also may use other data points on disability, history of disability, or regression and recruitment, and so on.
So extended year is not going to be like the traditional.
We're doing it a little different. So traditionally, wherever I've worked, it's been separate school. And if we're trying to be an inclusive district, we want to be able to take this opportunity to let the kids be in there next to their peers from school, the opportunity to have those speakers and field trips, the opportunity to maybe have the same teachers in classrooms instead of, say, a Carmen's student going to one of the other schools that has ESY, and all the students might be housed at, say, Glenwood, just for example.
Okay, and you said that there's only 250?
Of students with, around there with ESY eligibility out of our about 2,400 students with IEPs.
I thought extended year was for all students that had IEPs.
No, only those that are eligible by that criteria.
And my question is more so along the lines of, I know we had some from our device learners department and even some teachers who shared concerns that by shifting, obviously, how we've done things, do we have the sufficient supports in place in order to support those students as they transition to the less restrictive environment?
Certainly. And so for some of the students, some of the low incidence students might not be pushed out into gen ed in the same way as some of the students with less inclusive IEPs. But there is that possible opportunity to join in some of those encore or the speakers or the field trips. We have been fortunate to have more applicants than we projected, so we're going to bring those folks in, and we're continuing to work with directly with Amy Montalbano from the paraprofessional union to encourage those staff to also apply. And as Mr. Cesario said, we want as many of those staff members as we can, so that we can provide these opportunities and support. So right now, Yes, I think we challenged ourselves and we're taking a chance to do what we think is best for children, but it looks pretty good. We're doing very well on our projections for that staff.
Mr. Riddle?
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Bublitz, just briefly, could you just tell me how many students roughly we have in outplacement and what sort of summer programming is planned for some of those students, if any?
Sure, certainly. We have, I believe, about 101, 102. We brought a couple back recently, students in outplacement. The numbers I saw were about 80 of those students will be attending.
Okay.
Traditionally in therapeutic day schools, they almost every student, because of the nature of the intensity of their intervention and needs, almost every student attends ESY, and they typically will attend at their serving school, so those private schools. Of course, there could be some strange factor where they might need something else or something in addition, and we would work for with those schools to provide that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bublitz. All right, if we get the agenda back on. To the community, one of the things that we've been talking about is obviously we want everybody to be informed, but we also know that our meetings can be rather lengthy. And there was a compromise that I thought we attempted to make, which was to make sure that all the information items were accessible. I felt like that would make it better for the board to look at items to have better questions, and it'll also make sure that the information was available to the community. So while the agenda is extensive, majority of the items under information are renewal, furniture purchases, and so we do not plan on going through each of those items one at a time. So I just wanted to make that clear to the board and those watching online, as well as those in the audience today. We are going to go to item 4B, the framework for success presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Moten, Dr. Nault, and Mr. Alajakis to assist in the presentation. You can advance, please. So our objective and purpose here today is to define the strategic planning process and related items, explain the why, what is it we're doing, why are we doing this, and then discuss the impact of shifts and the process of support that's going to go along with this plan. And then how this will help to shape the outline of Destination 2027. So go ahead, Lee, you can keep moving here. We're going to just identify, before we start, I thought it was a good idea that we have these definitions here regarding a number of terms that you'll hear throughout the presentation. So strategic planning, organizational management activity, really used to set priorities and really focus energies and resources around that. So aligning those resources to what we are saying are the goals, essentially. KPI. So here we're going to talk about, you're going to hear us talking about key performance indicators. Throughout the presentation, you'll hear us mention KPI or KPIs. What we're talking about are key performance indicators. Really, it's a performance measurement that will help us understand how the organization or department is really performing. And if we're hitting those indicators, those marks that tell us that we're going to reach a benchmark, a milestone, that will eventually lead us to achieving a goal. The strategic goal, really, this goal is aligned to the overall vision, and it's going to be quantified. So we would use SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So really, these are something that we're going to set a time frame for. We're going to say, here's where we started, and here's where we want to end up. So, and that we can measure our progress over time. So again, I mentioned benchmark already, and that is going to be a place in a specific time where we're going to mark our progress. This is where we are in relation to our ultimate goal. Progress monitoring. This is something that we're going to do. It's an educational term. You often hear it in educational terms, but what we're going to do is periodically measure our progress in relation to that goal. And you're going to see as we talk about this in our presentation, this is going to be tied to systems of support. So not only are we measuring progress and evaluating that, but then we're also talking about what are the areas of strength, what are the areas to celebrate, or what are the areas of needed growth, and how can we support that? So before we move on, I want to make sure that everyone's clear on these definitions, or if there's any questions about those. Yes.
You talked about, or you're talking about Destination 2027, and we haven't developed Destination 2027 as of yet. At least it hasn't come before the board for approval. And we are still working on Destination 2022.
You're absolutely right, and thank you for pointing that out.
And so I am just wondering with Destination 2022, if we are at least 90, or I'm going to say 80% fulfilled in Destination 2022, where we are now talking about Destination 2027. Could you please clarify that?
Sure. And thank you for bringing that up, because the idea here wasn't to mislead anybody to thinking that we were finished with Destination 2022. The idea here is to talk about creating a structure, and that's what we're going to talk about, a structure that we're going to use to support us as we start to close out Destination 2022 and evaluate where we're at and move forward with making goals. And then also lead that into the process of creating Destination 2027. So we're not skipping anything. We're not moving over anything. I appreciate you bringing that up. I want to emphasize here that we're talking about a structure and a system of support so that we can identify goals and benchmarks. Many of these are already established through ESSA, through standards, through industry standards. So these are things that what we're doing right now, the overall focus, and as you see as I go through the progression of this presentation, we're just fine-tuning, getting more strategic and more intentional with the work we're doing in order to support our staff members.
So when are we, Superintendent, question for you, when will the board have input into Destination 2027? Okay, we need to have input in it too.
Yes, completely agree, Ms. Hannah. And so we are not ready at that point, and the board will have input. You will be able to tear it up, dice it up. We are not at that input. What we hear constantly is about accountability, accountability, accountability. And this was a monitoring system that we had hoped to launch last year, but due to COVID, that was not possible. So what we're looking here is streams of work, and looking at what data in that streams of works to hold us accountable to the work that we're supposed to do. So when we're looking either at freshmen on track, I'm just throwing out some graduation rate, etc. Those KPIs will be there, and we will be monitoring them. And as they get in their presentation, they'll give you more detail on what that's going to look like. So I'd ask if the board just hold on. I think you're going to get a really good picture of what this looks like. It's something that we should be doing and constantly be doing, and it'll be a nice complement as we build out our new strategic plan. We are not there yet, Ms. Hannah, so the plan is not completely created.
Yes, I just want to emphasize that this is not Destination 2027, but this is work that needs to be done prior to doing the work with the community and developing that collaboratively and with the community. So moving on, rationale and purpose, explaining the why of the work. Lee? So again, I had mentioned this earlier. Really, it's about being strategic and intentional. So not just setting these big goals and saying that we're going to achieve this task, but really focusing on what is the task, where are we at right now, and how are we going to develop, right? And really saying we're going to do this within this time and improve by such a percentage. Talking about metrics, also talking about practices. Setting clear expectations for the district, for each department, for each division, and each member of the organization, through having measurable outcomes, right? And this is something that I mentioned before about establishing these SMART goals and progress monitoring, identifying what our baseline is with whatever respective goal it is, and saying, and then coming to an agreement about what is realistic in terms of a year's growth, 2 years growth, 3 years growth. Where do we want to see? Where is the organization with this particular metric or this particular practice right now? And where do we want to see ourselves 5 years from now, right? But breaking it down year after year. And again, talking about how that leads into the development of the Destination 2027. Through this, we want to be clear about what are the expectations, what are the metrics that we're looking at, and what are the expectations of the district, of the departments, of the divisions. So we want to make sure that there's clarity so that we can be cohesive, we can focus and work together towards these goals, and do this collaboratively across departments, across divisions, throughout the organization. Again, the clarity piece, establishing clear goals and benchmarks, identifying the KPIs, those key performance indicators, and then those supports and resources, ongoing coaching and guidance through cycles of support. Cohesiveness, again, aligning these goals across the divisions and having regular opportunities to have discussion and really share and to articulate what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and where we're at in that particular juncture of the plan. Regular cycles of communication and feedback, again, within departments, within divisions, across departments, and across divisions. The collaboration piece, I've already mentioned this, the articulation, the planning between departments. A lot of this has happened. A lot of it is happening. What we're trying to do right now is fine-tune it. Make sure that we are all working towards that same vision. Making sure that our efforts are focused and driven towards those goals. You can keep going. So, overall, the idea here is that we're trying to be more efficient with our resources. And the way to become more efficient with them is to be very clear about what it is that we are working on. Having clearly defined goals with clearly defined benchmarks, regular opportunities for articulation regarding our progress towards those goals, and having a clear understanding of what those KPIs are. Not only within departments, not only within divisions, but across departments, across divisions, within the organization, and within the community, so that these items can be celebrated and the growth can be celebrated. The areas of success can be celebrated, those areas of growth can be discussed and supported. I've mentioned this before, this idea of having, right now, one of the other pieces is our organizational framework, and making small shifts in order to be in alignment with this idea of being efficient, having some cohesion, and having the ability to have quick access to communication and making it seamless. So I'm going to invite my colleagues up right now to talk about some of the shifts across the divisions. Really, there's only going to be a few, and the board members will have the organizational chart soon to examine that, but this is really a targeted realignment of the human capital to work more efficiently across the divisions and departments. establishing a continuum of teaching and learning from pre-K to 12 with the strategic focus on the post-secondary and the college and career. Expansion of our business and finance services for direct focus on all areas of fiscal oversight. LeBaron, did you want to add anything to that at this point, or Nick, or any of the team members? Good? All right. Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Null to speak to the next few slides.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board President, members of the board, community members and colleagues. So looking a little bit at what this cycle is potentially going to look like, what we did in the presentations kind of gave you an example from the academics division lens as well as from the operations division lens. So you'll see as I walk through this what each department will be kind of engaging in as they go through this process, which is going to obviously lead to the, as Eduardo mentioned, the development of a bigger plan as we move into close out 2022 and move into 2027. So from the academic scene perspective, next slide please. Here's what it'll look like. So essentially each division, all departments will have specific metrics that are directly related to their performance. So as an example, if you look at the high school, as the superintendent mentioned, freshmen on track, graduation rates, FAFSA completion rates, college acceptance, all those different metrics are related to specifically things that impact the performance of the people that support the high school. So there'll be metrics that will be identified for each division and each department. The number of metrics will vary. Some departments will have multiple, some will have a few, depending on, again, their focus and their work stream. And once they are aware of those metrics and what they are, that's when we'll start to dig into the historical and kind of some of that trend data to see how the district has performed with that metric over the course of the last few years. So that will help them then determine this baseline goal. And this will make more sense on the next slide when I show you the example. But so that's the next step. The third step then, once they have that baseline data established and identified, will be to write a SMART goal that's related to that particular metric. All right, something that's measurable, as Eduardo mentioned, something that's attainable, something that is time-bound, something that will allow them to track their work. Once that SMART goal has been established, they will identify KPIs that are related to that particular metric that will help them with the progress monitoring phase of this process. And then finally, they'll identify action steps that they will take that are targeted toward those KPIs to ultimately help them improve the results on those particular metrics. The next slide will kind of give you an example of all this in one snapshot here. So if we look at the metric freshman on track, that's the overarching metric that let's say Department A would be focusing on, one of probably many. And the goal would be looking at that trend data there. They did their analysis and they see that, and these are hypothetical numbers by the way, so they do their trend analysis and they see that the FOT rate in the district has been 2018-2019 at 64%, 2019-2020 68%, 2020-2021 73%. So after they have an understanding of where we've been with that particular metric, they would come up with a SMART goal. By the spring of 2022, the number of freshman students on track to graduate will increase by 5% from 73% to 78%. So it gives you an idea of the process that they go through to determining these SMART goals. Some key performance indicators that directly impact freshmen on track are listed right there. We know that freshmen cannot be on track if they're not coming to school. We know that freshmen will have a hard time being on track if their grades are, depending on their grade distribution and what their grades are like. Their GPA, the number of credits that they've accumulated. Okay, so those are some of the key performance indicators that directly impact that particular metric. So whoever is leading this work would then identify action steps towards those key performance indicators. So if I want to know obviously what my attendance rate is, I have to monitor attendance reports of our freshman students every 2 to 3 weeks, right? I have to know what that data is. I have to filter that. Students that are below a certain percentage, let's say students that have a 70% attendance rate or less, we know we need to target those students right away and start to see why they're not coming to school, connect with outreach, possibly get some interventions in place, because we know if they're not coming, likelihood is they're probably not going to be performing in their classrooms. So that would be an action step that I would take around one of these KPIs. Excuse me. Other things would be looking at grade reports, pulling D and F reports every week to see which kids are currently failing courses, what interventions are in place to support those students. Looking at the reason you want to look at those students that are in the D range as well, because we don't want them to fall into that failing category. So you're trying to target those students as well. So this is an example, again, of how this cycle, this process would play out for every one of the metrics that people have. And again, one department could have multiple metrics, departments could have 2 or 3, 6 to 7, depending on the work streams and the things that they're responsible for. So that's the example from the academic side. I think operations has a similar example. Thank you.
And so with all of these, with all of the success framework, okay, are there going to be, well, I'm sure there are, dollar amounts attached to this?
Obviously, depending on what strategies and what action steps people are taking to try to address those KPIs, there could be funding that's required to do some of those things. Our goal at the end of this is that everybody walks away from the table, if they're, depending on what department they work in, they know exactly which specific metrics they're going to be held accountable to, what KPIs are related to those metrics, and then they start to develop goals, again, to try to improve in those areas. Goals that are aligned to the bigger district goals, 2022 moving into 2027 as well. So 2022 is the foundation, and we're going to just continue to build off that, but get more strategic and intentional in the manner in which we're doing it.
So are we close to accomplishing the goals in 2022?
We did look, and we did do a review, and we have had an ongoing review of the goals. I can't speak to the entire Destination 2022, but when we did do a review, and this was last fall, I believe, there was significant progress and completion of a number of items. I can't speak to that right now, but as I just want to reiterate this point. A lot of what, and this addresses their question about funding too, a number of these items are already funded. A number of these goals are already established, and some of them are goals that are set by the state, they're standards that are set in industry. And so what we're trying to do is align what we're doing right now to that and make sure that every team member knows exactly what's expected of them and what support that they can have so that we can reach those goals. This will, again, lay the foundation. And to your point, Ms. Hannah, if there are items in Destination 2022 that have not been achieved, and I don't know because I don't remember every piece of it, and I don't want to say that every item has been, but if there isn't, then that's an indication that we need to provide extra attention to those areas. And we also need to compare them to what is the standard? What is the expectation from the state? What is the expectation from the federal government? What is the expectation or standard that was set by College Board, and any respective area, right?
And expectations from the Board of Education.
Correct. Which are in alignment with those, right? When we talk about ESSA, when we talk about other things, right? A lot of those expectations are in alignment with what those goals are.
And to Eduardo's point, the metrics that we're coming up with, as he mentioned, are all ESSA metrics. So, all of our schools receive designations based on their performance related to the ESSA metrics.
Yeah.
They're metrics that we pulled off Illinois State report cards as well. And then, the industry standards that some other departments and stuff have that may not have clearly articulated quantitative metrics, but they have standards that have been, identified within their particular industry of excellence. So those are all the things that are kind of driving this process. We're not pulling metrics randomly out of the air. We're being very strategic about the ones that we want each division and department to hone in on, because we know ultimately if we can do well and improve in those areas, it's going to impact school designations, it's going to impact district designation, it's going to impact obviously student achievement, and some of the other factors that come into play when we do strategic planning. So.
Thank you, Dr. No.
Waiting for the...
I was trying to wait, but go ahead, Ms. Leguizamo.
So this would be for Mr. Cesario. One of the things when you go into business, they ask you is when you start the business, you also have to know when is a point that you might need to call it quits. So I'm going to ask the question, if in this strategic plan, all of the interventions that you put into the progress monitoring, and hopefully the goal will be accomplished, but if there is a case that you're not seeing any progress, when is it that the team is going to take a look at that and admit defeat and potentially even change course of action? So what I'm looking for is the turnaround time of when are you going to identify that, you know what, this is not working, and we're going to have to reevaluate this entire goal and maybe even start from scratch.
So I think that's an excellent question, and it speaks to what something that I mentioned earlier, that we know that there are industry standards, right, or there are benchmarks or goals that have been established by ISB or by the federal government. That's one piece. Then we also have to look at what the baseline is for whatever it is that we're trying to improve. So the example is FOT. So if we look at Freshman on Track, that's something really that's research-based, that has a focus on leading to post-secondary success, right? And there's a minimum standard that it says, like, if you're here, then you have this much chance of being successful in college, right? So what we want to look at is what is our FOT right now? Where are we at right now? That would be our baseline. And then we would want to say, as Jason had mentioned, what's realistic, right? What's realistic to get to in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? During the course of that time, we can't just set the goal, right? We have to offer this progress monitoring. And really the progress monitoring is an opportunity for the supervisor to meet with the person who's implementing this and talk about, here, where are we in relation to our goal? Let's look at the KPI. Let's look at the benchmarks. Let's look at milestones and action items that you've completed. Where are we at? What progress are we seeing? So that in and of itself is a process of support to provide additional supports. This is going to happen every 3 weeks. So we're going to start at the beginning of the year, establish those goals, have the baseline, but then when the school year starts, we're going to go 3 weeks, and we're going to be meeting and looking at that data and talking about this so that we can implement that support immediately. We're not going to wait until the middle of the year, right? So then we will have a middle of year review to talk about, here, what do we need to do, right? Here are our options. We have to exhaust every option. Same thing, we continue with those every 3 weeks, and then we have an EOI. And what do we do at the EOI? We say whether or not we met the goal that we set for that particular year, right? And then if we didn't, there's a number of conversations that have to be had, right? About what supports do we have for this particular, and it's situational, right? It's dependent on the context and the particular situation. Does the person implementing need more support? Do they need more training in this particular area? Do they have enough support with human capital or with other resources? And then it's about readjusting the goal, right? And seeing where we're at. But it's a cycle, and it's part of what we're doing to be accountable. Ultimately, we're accountable to the students and families in this community. So it's really important that we are supporting the people that we have here, and then also be looking at what it is that they need to grow as well, and how we can support them with that. Does that help with framing that for you?
I mean, it does help with the framing, and so I am looking at it from an organizational standpoint, right? And what I'm hoping what doesn't happen is that once when we find something is not working, that we're waiting an entire year, right, to mitigate some of that. And that's what I'm really looking for organizationally, because we're not talking about specific details yet. This is all preliminary. This is all first forethought about what could be strategic destination 2027, right? So I'm looking from an organizational standpoint. So I appreciate that. And when I'm looking at benchmarks, you're going to provide an industry norm as well as our target, and then a third line that shows where we're our progress, right? And that's how those three lines will be communicated to the community and to the board.
I think that we haven't, you're right, we are working on creating the visual and the tool that we're going to use. We're actually have another presentation right after this. But that's what we would ideally want to do, right? That we want to show that ultimately here's where the standard is, and here's where we're at, and then here's where we want to be, and what's realistic. To say we're going to go to 0 to 100% is not realistic in 1 year, right? And it depends on what it is, but more than likely it's not realistic. So we want to do something, again, using those SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, right? Realistic and timely, right? So what we have is it's time bound, but it's also got to be realistic. What's a growth that we're going to see that's sustainable? Oftentimes we have people that want to see 10 to 20% growth in 1 year. Often when you see that, it's an anomaly and it's not sustainable. Incremental growth over time usually is fostered by a change in practice, and that's what we want to see. We want to see a shift in practice that will help to facilitate long-term and embedded change over time. And it's relative to certain areas. So I don't want to say that this has to happen all over the board. But when we're talking about some of these major growth areas, that's oftentimes what it's related to.
Right, and that's what happened with Destination 2022, is one of the weaknesses in that one was the goals that was listed on there were stretch goals. And so it was unrealistic. And so when the community looks at Destination 2022 and asks the question, did we meet those goals? Some of them may have been met. Some of them probably may not have been met. Also, we have to take into account we didn't, fold in COVID into the Destination 2022. So as we'll be coming up, I know, having a different conversation on that Destination 2022, but I'd like to also just make a comment that in this new strategic planning organizationally, that we do put in some sort of realistic goals. If we want to put in the stretch, we can, right? This is where we'd love to be, but realistically, this is probably where we might be. So just thinking in regards to those benchmarks. Those were all my questions. Thank you, Board President.
I think you got to go. That's fine. Go.
Good? Okay. Okay. Mr. Moulton?
Thank you for the questions. Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, community, and staff. So the operations team is going to follow the same strategic planning cycle. We're going to identify metrics, evaluate trend data, write our SMART goals for the departments in the operations division, identify the KPIs, and implement the action steps. If you could go to the next slide, please. The example that we have this evening is recruitment with our HR department. They recently did a presentation for the Board of Education. We know it's our goal to staff the hard-to-fill vacancies. The goal is have those 100% staffed across the district. But we do want to be realistic. We know that we have some trends throughout the district when people submit their retirements, resignation, life-altering events, as well as changes, particularly in legislation that deal with certification for certain positions. Math, science, bilingual, those are some of the hard-to-fill positions that we're speaking of, and the HR department has spoken to these. This SMART goal, as an example, would be by next spring to reduce the number of vacancies in those hard-to-staff certified teaching positions district-wide by 5 vacancies, going from 40 to 35. So we're looking at the 3-year trend data, 60, 53, and 40 vacancies, if we were doing this simulation in real time, to show every spring, which is the prime recruitment season and staffing season between spring and summer in preparation for the fall, within District 60 as well as other districts, we want to start in the spring with a lower number so we can focus our energy on those positions. This makes this a whole year process, an annual process where we're evaluating these trends and helping ourselves when it comes to the spring hit our targeted goals. Some of the KPIs associated with this goals are targeted recruitment for credentials and competencies, as well as professional development. What ties into the action steps of certain items, such as grow your own. We can do ourselves a tremendous effort by growing our own here to fill some of those vacancies, as well as enhancing our digital recruitment efforts. We're changing with the times, slowly but surely. A lot of the face-to-face going to the job fairs is not where it's at right now. It's social media and it's doing the digital recruitment. Participate with the academics team and section counts so we have a true number of any new vacancies that may exist for the upcoming school year. So we have a target there. And routinely monitoring the requirements for every single position to ensure, similar to the Grow Your Own, that if there are things we can do as a district to put people in a position here locally within our school community to fill some of these vacancies, we're able to do that. And we're not hearing about it after the fact and being reactive, we're being proactive. Again, as Mr. Cesario mentioned, 3-week time period once we do our beginning of the year meeting. So we're constantly analyzing this, we're constantly staying current so we can put ourselves in a better situation from a recruitment standpoint and filling vacancies for the hard to staff positions for the upcoming year and not having a mass wave of heavy recruiting and filling vacancies in July and August for the start of the school year. That would be the ultimate goal.
Thanks, Mr. Moulton. Okay, so the next piece here we're going to talk about. I'm sorry.
Wouldn't part of this also be retention? If we retain as many people as we can, then we don't have as many vacancies?
Absolutely. So again, this is an example, recruitment, retention, it's all part of it, and those are the things that we're discussing. We talked about recruitment for several years now, and we've done a lot there. Focusing on retention, ensuring not only we get the staff here, that we maintain them is going to be part of this process.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move into the next couple slides here regarding the process of support. So this is something that I actually alluded to earlier when Ms. Leguizamo asked her question about how this is going to be monitored and how we're going to support, really. And so really one-on-one, currently both LeBaron and I hold one-on-one meetings. I hold one-on-one meetings with all team members once a week, and then I have a division meeting once a week. And so there are quite a few meetings during the week. They're necessary, but what we want to do here is we want to have in 3-week cycles that we're talking about. The first week would be a one-on-one. The second week would be an ASAP, and again, you'd see these both happening in operations finance and ASAP, right? And then we would have our individual division meetings where we are doing this 3-week cycle, right? And then we'd have division crosswalks. What is a division crosswalk? Really, that's where we're bringing both sides of the house together. We did do this 2 years ago, not last year because of COVID, but in the previous year, we did have opportunities to bring both sides of the house together to articulate on a number of areas, especially around calendar and planning for professional development, and it was really effective. So we want to continue doing that. I mentioned that this process of support starts at the beginning of year, right, where we're setting our goals, talking about what the benchmarks are, and so that's going to happen really, that should happen the middle of July before school starts. And then we'd have another middle of the year conversation that would take place late December, early January. And then an end of year that would happen late May, early June. And I already outlined kind of what the discussion is. Those are in between. We're having the 3-week meetings. And then we're going to have really a middle of year review and then an end of year review where we start to establish goals for the following year. So the BOI review benchmark data and KPIs, determine goals for SY22, establish the cycle of support and coaching, and that's, again, those 3-week cycle, one-on-one, division meeting, and then your process of support meeting where we're talking about your progress, right? All right, and then I think I already spoke to this. Really, the goal meetings in August 15, process of support meeting every 3 weeks, evaluate, adjust, implement, celebrate success, and determine areas of needed support. Middle of year, this is mid-January, status update to stakeholders. So that's where we would really kind of have those meetings and then come to a forum like this and say, here were the goals that we set at the beginning of the year. Here's where we're at right now. All right, and here's where we're really hitting it hard. Here's where it's problematic, and this is what we're going to do to address. Okay. Next slide, please. And then the end of year, really mid to late May review, status update again to stakeholders. Did we do what we set out to do this year? Did we get close? Did we surpass it? What did we do? Determine areas of support, and then adjust those goals and plans for the following school year. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Cesario. So when it comes to the goal cycle reviews, I understand the beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. However, when we're looking year-to-year data, beginning of the year 2021 is not the same cohort as beginning of the year 2022, right? So will you be reviewing the data also via cohort?
Yes, but we have to remember that it's not just student metrics that we're looking at. So and you're right that we have to look at, like if we're talking about freshmen on track, that freshman on track will then move to the sophomore on track. And so that's one cohort that you're talking about that we can compare, right? We can compare growth across, and then we can compare them side by side with the understanding that these are different groups of students, and that the numbers of students would also have an impact. I think that's part of the discussion too. Overall, right? I think with some of the data, it's going to be dependent on cohort data. And that's one of the reasons why we might want to shift in how we look at our assessments too, how we're looking at them instead of right now where it's fall to spring, rather do it spring to spring. So then we can capture that cohort data, accurately capture some growth. But these are all pieces of it, and I'm glad that you're pointing this out because right now we're highlighting this. Right now we're working to develop this, and it is a daunting and huge task. It is not perfect, and I said this before when I was speaking about the work that we're doing around the curriculum. It's about the process, it's not about the product, and that we'll always be refining this. So as we are progress monitoring, our team members, we're also developed a method by which we can progress monitor how we're implementing as well. And that's where the board gets involved too, because that's another opportunity to get feedback from the board about how this is working, right? And that constant feedback really helps to make adjustments. And this is what this process is right now at this particular juncture. Jason mentioned that Destination 2022 helped lay the foundation. I agree wholeheartedly. The metrics are not the same as this. The way that we're measuring things is not the same. But I feel like it laid a good foundation. There was a lot of great work that was done, and that continues to be done. But at this particular juncture, now it's time to be very strategic, very intentional to build on that. There's growth that we need to make, but there are a lot of great things going on in this district too.
I think that would be nice to understand under each KPI or goal, strategic goal, if you identify if you're going to be progress monitoring that through beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, or by cohort, or by both. One of the examples could even be PSAT to SAT, right? You take it in your junior, you take it in your senior. So the cohort could also be a type of tracking. So that's what I was wondering. And I didn't see that in this goal, and that's the only reason why I brought that up.
In terms of the cohort tracking, that's something you didn't see? Yeah. So again, there's nuances depending on what data you're looking at, and that the student data, I think it is really important that you're keeping that into consideration. But this is a really high-level overview of what the structure is. So that's, again, just to reiterate, we're just focusing on the structure. The examples that were used weren't to be used as a point of conversation for this per se, but your point about the student metrics is well taken. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's something that we have to focus on. There are other metrics like recruitment where we don't have to worry about. What we would look at is the number of vacancies, right? Not necessarily cohort data, right? So it would be dependent on that, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I just got a couple quick, brief statements for consideration as you guys develop the plan and then we work with the board. And that is, one of the things, collaboration still seems to be a concern as we get further from the top of the organization to those who are actually on the front lines. So as we develop the plan, I want to see intentional collaboration outside of admin ranks, but also amongst the administrators, right? So that it feels like a more collaborative plan. And I think sometimes, like 2022, we went out, we heard stakeholders, and then we said, based on what you told us, this is kind of what we feel. I would like to see a much more collaborative process. And I'm sure that was undergirded in some of the criteria that you guys had put on there. Collaboration was one of those keys. I know when I hear efficiency, I hear /supports, right? That's the corporate America in me. So I hope that that obviously is not our intent as we talk about efficiency. And then I would like to concur with Ms. Leguizamo in that even in my job, when you have goals, those goals are I always tell my employees, those goals are your requirements, right? They're not suggestions. So anything above and beyond the goal is, like you say, a stretch goal. But if this is what we say is what you should be hitting based on the information and data that we have, that's the expectation. And I would like to see realistic versus stretch goals. And those are all just my points for takeaway.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, this is not taking the place of Destination 2027. We're not, but it's exactly using what you said. Is like this is where we should be, right? This is what ESSA is saying that where we should be. This is where ISB says we should be. Here's where national standards say we should be. That's all this is. And then the other piece of it, I think this will help frame Destination 2027. That was the. And I apologize for not articulating that more clearly. This isn't the process of 2027, but we needed to establish like a framework right now. That's what I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation and for that work, Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief comment. Thank you, Mr. Cesario, because, me being a young member, just starting my career, even understanding key performance indicators is really important. And I think just for clarity, when you're having a vision, right, or thinking about a goal, it's okay to say, this is how we build a rocket. If we land them on the stars as we shoot to the moon, like that's okay. So I understand that this is more about methodology than about outcomes for right now. And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Why out so far?
Did you say why so far?
Yeah, why out so far?
I put that in there as a placeholder based on how the last one was. I think it was 5 years for the last one. And so just for consistency's sake, I put it out there like that. Ideally, though, as I mentioned, in terms of what we're doing, we're going year to year, right? There are some goals. Like Dr. Bublitz already has a whole plan that's mapped out, and it's actually a 3-year plan. And his was mapped out in alignment with this, having really certain standards and benchmarks there with key performance indicators. So depending on what it is, ideally we want to look at these things year to year. And then there's some, like his is a humongous goal that requires a lengthier process. That's a 3-year plan, right? In terms of the question that you just asked, though, I just based it on what the previous cycle was and just to be consistent with that.
I just want to state that This is more of a methodology on how we're going to support our staff and our staff understanding what is required of them. We all have items that we are required of, and so these benchmarks are very transparent. Each staff member knows what their benchmark is. It's going to sit down and set goals with the deputy and hit those. This is not the strategic plan as of yet. It is a component of it. However, this is the work we do every day. We educate kids every day. This is the work that they've been doing for 5 years. We're just getting it more linear and granular where people know what's expected of them, and we can see what supports we need to add to our employees to ensure that they're successful in their endeavors, and that's what this is about.
Thank you, Superintendent. Mr. just real brief, yes.
Real
Go ahead,
quick.
Mr. Riddle, and then Ms. Leguizamo.
Okay, I just wanted to make an observation here. I hope that, as we begin to use this process and develop a strategic plan for the next 5 years, that we would involve, and I think some others have said that already, that we would involve the community and our staff, so we get buy-in for this plan and an understanding of what their goals are, what they really think is important as educators in our community or as parents. And I'm sure we're going to do that, but if we can somehow involve them in this process early on so that they begin to feel, well, it's not coming down from up above, it's coming from starting from below and going up.
I just want to reiterate one more time. I'm not talking about, this is not,
the process.
Yeah, this is not Destination 2027. This is like the minimum that's required of everybody to do and what every school should be doing in Illinois. That's I just want to make that clear because I think we're getting, I think this is getting a little muddled. The title is a framework.
It's a framework.
That's the framework that we are using. I just want to make that clear because, I wholeheartedly agree. We need to get community input when we're developing a vision. This is not, this is a framework that we're going to use as part of how we're going to reach that vision, right?
And
because
this is
these
a big
are
district. And I understand we need this process, and I believe in this process that you're doing, because I think for many years we didn't have a plan, we didn't have a 5-year plan, we didn't have a vision until our superintendent came here, and that was something the board felt strongly about. We needed a vision. It's a big district with a lot of things are happening, and we needed a plan, and we got a plan. And as you said, we need to build on the one that we have now. So
yeah, that's the process. This is the structure. And maybe that's a better way to frame that. That's the process. This is the structure.
Okay.
We have to have this structure. Any organization, if they're going to be successful, you have to know if I'm going to step into a role, if I'm new to this district, I need to know what I'm being held accountable for.
Right.
All right, and regardless of who's there and who's not there, I need to know that. And that's it. This is the process. This is the structure.
I just want to say, we'll revisit the strategic plan. I get where we're getting caught up. I mean, but we're going to revisit that. So yes, Mr. Riddle, we will have that where we did that the first time. We sat down with community members, we invited parents out. Our FACE department is stronger now than it was before, so I'm hoping we have more of a turnout. We'll engage our staff, we'll revisit the vision, we'll revisit the mission, our core values, all of that's going to be a process. We are not there right now. As you know, we've been working through the pandemic remotely and had other things thrown on a plate. We're not there now. Now that we're in the gauge of re-engaging our students, everybody coming back into school, getting our summer school plan, getting ready to reopen. Now you're going to see this launch even faster than it was before. And then the board will have more time to tease this out, give input. This is not set in stone. I also want to reiterate that a strategic plan is a living document. It's not set in stone. It's very fluid. You go back, you change it. There's many philosophies on do you set certain goals, do you set stretch goals? I mean, that's all philosophical. There's a lot of research behind it. We took the stretch goal because we could not consciously see just saying 30% of our students should read at level at that point, right? And so that's philosophical. That's a debate that not a debate, but that's the conversation that the board will have when we start having those conversations. What I would also like to see is some training for the board around KPIs. What does that look like? How does that look like in institutions? Because we can throw around key performance indicators, but what does that really mean? And what does that mean to an organization? And how does that propel an organization? And so there's a lot of research and theory behind there. and theory of action on how you do this on cycles of improvements that Mr. Cesario is talking about and, has been trained in and we've worked with previously, that I believe, we all need to become more comfortable with the verbiage, the language, common vocabulary, et cetera. So I'll speak with the board president on when that will be, if he thinks that that is something he would like to do for the board, if it, would be beneficial as we move forward. But please note that this is not the launch of the strategic plan.
Right.
This is just really ensuring that our staff knows what we're asking of them, and so we know better how to support them so they're successful.
But as we begin this process, and this is what we're doing, I would like to see us, because we're an educating institution, that we would teach this process to our kids. I know the children that are involved in AVID, for instance, when I spoke to them one time, several times, they said, we didn't learn this anywhere else. We learned it in AVID. How to plan our lives, how to plan our school. It's something that school doesn't teach sometimes. Kids how to do simple things and how to plan for a goal. Mm-hmm. And so I think it could be a learning opportunity as we begin to work this plan out, that we begin to teach it to our children. Even the smallest children can set a plan for the day or for something they want to do and learn how to achieve it and talk about it and evaluate it. It's a life skill that too many people lack.
I think that we do a really good job with it at the elementary school. We definitely need to get better at it at the middle school and the high school, and let me explain why. And I don't see the Gugoviches here any longer, but I do see one of our elementary school principals out there. And Mr. Riddle, your daughter taught at Hyde Park. So at elementary school, kids really know what reading level they're at, and they know the goal that they're supposed to obtain, right? Whether it's J, whether it's K, and they'll say, I'm working to get to J. And they have data cycles because they know what is required of them, where they should be at a certain point, so it's very much this cycle of improvement for them around reading. And even in math, right? We have to get tighter with that. Oh, I see two elementary school principals out there. We have to get tighter with that around at middle school and at the high school. Well, what does that look like with their SAT scores now, et cetera? Their freshmen are track. We talked about goal setting at the freshman seminars, so there is some resemblance of that, but it does need to get tighter where students know exactly what they should hit by when, et cetera.
Financial planning, everything. I mean, we go to college and people leave their term papers until the end. They don't know how to plan for those things. It's going to take time. So yeah, it's a life skill that we really need to teach, and this would be an opportune time as we begin to develop this new plan for the district. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. Ms. Leguizamo, final thoughts, and then we'll move on.
Yep, I'm hoping to wrap this conversation up with just an understanding on how and when this framework will be communicated, because if we're wanting to steer this barge to make a left turn, all of us need to be aware of the methodology of this framework. And so I'm trying to understand, from a student to district colleagues to our community organizations and our families, how will this information be communicated and how often?
What an awesome question and a great segue to our next presentation. So we actually started the communication today in having a high-level overview. We didn't share what we shared here with you all because we wanted you to see it first, but we did let our teams know that this is what we're talking about, a process of improvement, and we're looking at making some slight shifts in order to be more efficient and to support them in the work that they're doing, right? But in terms of your what you're saying and what you're both saying, and educating the organization, informing stakeholders about what we're doing, we have looked at some tools that will help us do that, not only capture the data, but also use that as a dashboard so that we can have reports that we can generate. And so actually with the board president's approval, if we can move into the next presentation with Dr. Nault, he can show how respondability is going to do a lot of what you're saying. There's still going to be more communication that's going to be need to be done in this manner and in smaller situations, but this is a tool that's going to help us to articulate, help us to visualize, help us to process reports, to talk about what our KPIs are, what our progress is, so on and so forth. So without further ado, Dr. Nault.
Thank you, Eduardo. Good evening again, everyone. So yeah, as he mentioned, the tool that I'm about to present to you really aligns nicely with this framework and how we're going to start to develop it, monitor it, have conversations about it, communicate to stakeholders about it, etc. So we are requesting approval for a program called Respondability. Respondability essentially is a goal-based planning approach, similar to what we just described for you, that will track our district-specific needs and goals and translate them into an interactive work plan. And I'm going to show you kind of a demo of what I have here in a second. But essentially is think of it as a digital school improvement plan or a digital framework that's going to help us bring this presentation that we just gave you to life, okay? It's going to help us create some dashboards. And by dashboards, you know, think of a dashboard on a car. You have all these different metrics and meters and things that you're looking at. It's going to help us create dashboards for the academics division, for the operations division, where we can, again, start to track and look at some of these metrics more closely. It's going to help us map out the work, clarify, focus, allow for support, coaching, and whatnot. And then it'll just, again, the most important piece will allow us to observe and monitor implementation to see if we are impacting student outcomes and supporting the continuous improvement process. The amount we're asking is for $45,500. The funding source has been identified as Title I. Let me show you real quickly what this looks like. So this is a demo account that was given to me by the vendor. It's not an actual live account. It's just a dummy account where I was able to go in and kind of play around with this a little bit. So this would be an example of a dashboard that would be utilized by both the academics and operations division. If you look on the left-hand side, I know it's kind of difficult to see, but you can see goal number 1. These should look familiar to you. These are the superintendent's initiatives: student achievement, community engagement, organizational effectiveness, institutional access, etc. So underneath each one of those, you can have a list of your goals and a list of your metrics and your tasks and everything that you're doing to target that particular area. What I have displayed for you right now is a portion of one of my work streams, strategy and accountability. So you see we can create different work streams for different departments and different divisions. So if you look at mine here, and again, these are just sample metrics that I threw in here just for the sake of showing the board and the community what this looks like. 5 essential survey results. We know that's a metric that that the schools are always accountable for in terms of getting those responses from teachers, from students, from parents, etc. So essentially what we can do is go in, if that's one of our metrics, we can go in and establish where we want to be at given points in the year. So that's where you see that red, yellow, and green indicators up there. We can customize those however we want. And we just have the weeks of May up here right now, but essentially, if you look at the week of 5/21, I can go in there if I'm the person responsible for this metric, and I can add a comment about my progress or where I'm at, some of the things that I'm working on, and I can also put in a number in there that quantifies our completion percentage at that point in time in the year as well. I can add tasks to that. So if I'm having a coaching conversation with a team member, we can click on that and I can say, okay, Eduardo, based on this metric, these are some tasks that still need to be completed for this metric. Right now, here's where we currently are as the week of May 5th, 2021. By the end of the year, we want to be at X. So, you know, it's a way for us to have a coaching conversation and a dialogue with that individual person about progress on that particular metric. And then as you can see, as you progress, the colors can change as well to kind of let you know that you're inching closer to your desired result. Kind of what Lucy was mentioning about, you know, how do we know we have the right goals, and when if we give up or trash a goal or get rid of a goal or rethink a goal. If you go through the entire year and you're in the yellow for the entire year and you never kind of meet that target, maybe the goal from the beginning wasn't the right goal to start with. So that MOY and that EOI conversation that we have would be a great way to look at this and say, you know what, we haven't made any progress on this metric in 8 weeks now, and we're at the middle of the year. Perhaps we need to rethink some of the actions that we're taking, or perhaps we need to rethink the goal itself, and come up with a different plan. So it offers some reflection visually for you as you track your progress. Another example is the freshman on track. You can see there another metric, and again, I just put random numbers in there to kind of show you if our end goal is 100%, kind of how we kind of are journeying toward that goal, and graduation percentage as well. You can see, I think I have, once we get to 90%, you're in the green, so anything above 90%, you're going to remain green. So if 90% was our goal, ideally we would hope to hit that goal by this time of year, next year, mid-May, and have at least 90% of our seniors graduating. So an example or a visual so you can see what this would look like for each department. So every single person, so Jason Nault would know exactly what metrics Jason's going to be held accountable to. Jason has a responsibility to track his progress. So when he meets with his Eduardo, he can share with Eduardo action steps that he's taken, comments and notes that he's added in there, and they can assign tasks as needed as well. And it's a really great tool to really help us bring this framework for success to life, like I mentioned before. There's a lot of different ways you can configure it. You can customize it. All those tabs on the left, you can customize based on, again, your district and your division goals. And there's just a lot of great things here that can contribute to this process that we're speaking to.
Did I see hands over there?
Yeah.
Ms. Leguizamo, then Ms. Gonzalez, then Ms. Hannah. As quick as you can, please.
Dr. Nolt, can you tell me how this information is inputted, sliced and diced? I'm wondering, is this by filter or is this the dashboard?
This would be a I'm sorry.
No, sorry. When I'm looking at this, I can do this in Excel, right? By putting in the Excel dashboard and running a macro in there and putting all of the conditional formattings. So I'm wondering, how is this different than an Excel goal setting, which we already have an Excel program?
I wish I had your Excel skill set, by the way, because I can't do some of those things that you just talked about, and I've been doing this for a long time. But from a visual standpoint, obviously it's much more clear, and it paints a much more clear picture for the person and the employee about, they can see, if you look at the colors, they can see specifically at each month of the year kind of how they're trending, where they're trending. They can add tasks and assign them to people. So I can assign particular tasks to people within my team and say, hey, I need this person to do this task by this date and give them a due date. It allows me to email them. I can set up regular reporting emails where I have the list of tasks that are available, and I can generate a weekly email to employee A that says, hey, this is the task you've been assigned to, as a reminder to them to kind of stay on track, stay on target. So there's different features in it that allow us to communicate more effectively. There's different features in it that allow us to customize, like I said, some of the things that we're tracking. And just from a user-friendly vantage point, instead of looking at a spreadsheet, it's a lot more visually appealing, and it's easier to have a conversation and a dialogue with someone as opposed to looking at 1,000 different cells and 1,000 different rows and columns and whatnot. So it's helpful in that regard.
And they're also...
And this is like a SharePoint. He raised his hand, sorry. This is kind of like a SharePoint site, right? Or is this a website?
This is web-based. It's a web-based program. So it's functional with Google. So everyone that has we're Google district, so anyone that has our Google email can sign in and get access to it.
So real quickly, so respondability is also helping us with strategy too, in terms of, and not only they're helping with inputting, but they're also helping us with framing conversations, reports that would be most useful at different times of the year. So I think that's another component to this that's going to be very helpful.
And so I don't see any extract information on here, but you are able to extract?
In terms of exporting and whatnot?
Yep.
I was given the sandbox earlier this week, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to play in the sandbox, so to speak. So I just wanted the board to kind of see a visual of what this would look like. There is reporting features, like I mentioned, on here that we can export things not only to email, but into other Word platforms, Excel and whatnot. So it does have those capacities. I think it allows you, to also build your teams. So like you can, again, organize it any way you want. So, when you're having a conversation with someone, it's a great way to just, let's pull this up. Let's look at your metrics. Show me some of the things that you've done working on the last couple of weeks. Let's talk about some of those. Have you seen a difference in your metric or your KPIs? Have you, what are the improvements that you've seen? Have you digressed, et cetera? And then it just really allows you, again, to have that supporting coaching conversation with that person. And it gives you a good sense, too, of some of the things that they're doing as well. So I can go in here at any point, and even if I'm not having a one-on-one conversation with a team member, and I can look and see what we've done for the month of May. It gives you monthly reports as well. So it gives you all the tasks that you completed in a particular month. If I wanted to run all the tasks that were completed in a particular month around a particular metric, I could see everything that was done in that month as well. So.
I'll have more in-detail conversations about this with you afterwards, but just as a final comment on what I was almost hoping to be presented here, it would be more of a drill down factor. So I'm looking at the goal, and I'd be able to drill down to say, okay, drill into specific school, drill into specific cohort, grade, teacher, student, whatever that may be. And I know that those dashboards are a lot more complex than something like this is. When I'm looking at this, it's easily done like in an Excel feature. And I know we have a lot of great Excel people in our midst that could probably do a quick dashboard like this that has the different color coding things based off of conditional formatting and so on and so forth. So that's just my last final comment, and then I'll just...
And if you look on the left there where it says example school A, you can put school level data all in here as well. So we can access different schools and their data if we want. So you can create by school, by team, by department, you can create it however you want.
Sake of the conversation as well as the board. Once again, this isn't a tool that will be used by the Board of Education. Am I correct? This will be a tool that will be used by you all in order to communicate with the employees. And so the request is a progress monitoring tool based on the KPIs that will be decided by the superintendent in collaboration with the Board of Education from the previous presentation. I'm gonna have Ms. Gonzalez, if that's okay, Ms. Leguizamo, to ask her question. Then Ms. Hannah had kind of piggybacked to yours that I think will wrap this up nicely. Go ahead, Ms. Gonzalez.
Yeah, so everyone kind of half answered my question because I was more worried about who's actually going to use this and whether the 45,000 encapsulates some sort of training for everyone. Because if everyone's expected to use this within the district, the learning curve is probably steep, but I think it would be useful.
So right now, we are only utilizing this at the district level. Ultimately, we can expand it and have it be used by schools as well to do school improvement planning as well. So right now it's going to be a tool just for our, related to our framework and aligned with the framework. There's training that does come involved with it as well for all the users. So we do have the potential to ultimately expand this as well. Right now we use a school improvement planning template, which I think is also Excel, if I'm not wrong. But this could be something that could be expanded into the school level as well, so schools and principals and ILTs could do their strategic planning using this program as well.
Ms. Hannah?
Where is the dashboard that the school board purchased before? We have...
Illuminate? Illuminate?
What is it?
Illuminate?
She's
Is
talking-
that the one? Is that what I'm talking about? I need technology.
Yes, that's the dashboard. That's a different type of dashboard. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, Illuminate is where we house a majority of our assessment data that students take. So that's when you get your BOI, MOI, EOI assessment reports. A lot of that data is housed in Illuminate. It allows schools to run customized reports based on assessments as well. But this focuses on other metrics. Assessments can also be a part of this as well, but this is kind of more of some of these other KPIs that we were talking about in this program here. Illuminate is more of the housing warehouse.
So we cannot add on to Illuminate to capture this?
They're separate programs. I don't know the functionality of Illuminate, if it would allow this type of progress monitoring. It's more of just a reporting program that generates reports for you. This is more of a tool that helps you progress monitor the data and the metrics and the KPIs that we've been discussing for each division and department.
Two different things.
Yeah.
They're two different things.
Yeah.
So Ms. Hannah's point, and I'll just get it for the team, is a lot of times, and we talked about this too, even in my suggestion with the MTSS supports, is a lot of times the board is approving additional things, but we're not able to see how it connects and how they all work together. So just a simple search of dashboards, you have Illuminate, you have what is it, CI dashboard, you have all these different dashboards. And so when Ms. Hannah hears the word dashboard, what are each of these doing? And I'm not saying we get into that conversation tonight, but understand that's where the question is coming from, is the board is continually purchasing dashboards to make things easier, make reporting better, to generate stuff, to keep us better focused and on task. But a lot of times we aren't able to see how each dashboard relates to another. As the superintendent just explained, these are two completely different things that do different things. But overall, even when you partners for results, right? Those different things are we hear is
Sure.
going to help us create a dashboard.
Think of this as the goal-setting platform that's going to help us with the goal-setting and progress monitoring. The other two dashboards, IC and Illuminate, those are the ones that we pull daily attendance rates. Those are the ones that we pull assessment scores. Those are the ones that we pull whatever data it is that we're trying to pull. We pull that data out of there, but we can use that data then to inform, that trend analysis that we were talking about, where we've been the last couple of years. Now, how are we going to plan this, map this out, and set some goals around it, and have conversations with people individually about their progress towards certain metrics.
And then my final question is the most important question. How is this beneficial for our students?
Well, all the KPIs that we've identified are related to student achievement, right? Everything that we've talked about, freshmen on track, graduation rates, test scores, all those things are impacting student achievement. So looking at this platform, it's going to, again, ensure that all the work that we're doing is aligned to the bigger goals of the district, to the bigger student outcomes that we're trying to tackle. And it's going to allow us to have those conversations with individuals to improve practice that ultimately will impact these metrics.
Thank you. All the other items on the agenda have been submitted for information.
There's one that we have a principal here that wanted to present. It'll be a 5-minute presentation. Whittier.
No problem, Dr. W. Cesario. What I wanted to say is the items 5A through AA have been submitted for your information. All of those things are available for the public as well. But we wanted to, do the Whittier School Achievement, and then very briefly the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. Then we're going to take a 5-minute recess, and then we are going to, the majority of the items on operations are there for information as well. So with that, here we are, Whittier, item 6A, Whittier School Achievement.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Principal Rice de los Sanchez. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Cesario. My name is Jennifer Rice de los Sanchez, and I'm the principal of Whittier Elementary School. So thank you, President Ewing. Thank you, Board of Education. Thank you, Superintendent Plasencia, for your time this evening. Although many of the people that work to my left and to my right at Whittier Elementary School are not here, hopefully they're virtually watching this. This is the first time that they're hearing this wonderful breaking news, as we're calling it, that Whittier has been accepted to become an international baccalaureate candidate school. And it is the first Not the first in Lake County, but we don't have any schools in Lake County that are an international baccalaureate school. And I'd like to just tell you just a little bit about the possibilities of working towards these goals that you all are speaking of. And this is a 2 to 3 year plan to work towards becoming an actual international baccalaureate school for our students here in Waukegan. So we're just really here to celebrate that. And on our next slide, some of the things that really set apart an international baccalaureate school is that all of our students, every single student, is going to learn and will learn a second language. And they have the opportunity equitably to learn a second language. So that's just wonderful. For this language of a PYP, it just means primary years. There's a few other. There's MY, that's middle years for middle school, and there's a diploma. But so primary is kindergarten through 5th grade. And what an international baccalaureate school focus on is how do our students learn about other cultures while they're learning their standards simultaneously. And the main lens, especially as you speak to this, Mr. Riddle, is how do we build these soft skills in our students to become leaders? That is a lot of time and coaching to have students be able to ask questions in 2nd grade. That takes a lot of work. And that is going to be our main focus is when our students leave Whittier in 5th grade, they are a leader. They're not only a leader in their classroom, in our school, they are a leader in our community. And through these units of study that our teams are going to create together, they are taking action. Whether it's with their teacher in kindergarten, right? Whether it's reaching out to our Board of Education to see, how leadership and how policy is changed, or to our school district to talk about how we recycle and how we can improve our recycling at our school, right? There's so many opportunities for our students to build their agency and their voice and their choice. And the exciting thing is all of the staff that work very hard at Whittier have been working to become professional learning communities. This work really stems around how do we plan together? How do we sit at a table democratically and have this discourse of what is the best unit or what is the best text and what questions do we want kids to ask before they end this unit and before they learn what we want them to know. And so that's the exciting piece. The other piece is really about how do we across our school wall to wall, besides giving all of our children opportunities for a second language, is how do we have opportunities for our encore teachers to integrate what they teach with our core instruction. And so this work of collaboration really is teams working together. We realized that we weren't including as well as we could have our diverse learning classrooms, our low incidence programs, and having the same common language and common understanding of what all students are learning in grades K through 5. We really realized that everyone needs to be at the table and be provided opportunities for that input, that agency. And lastly, the main thing as I was speaking of is the soft skills of problem solving, all those social emotional development skills, communicating, and ultimately researching things that also are important to kids. So when we're planning a unit of study, whether it be 5 weeks, 6 weeks, we have to add about a 20% wedge that offers and affords kids to add their feedback of what they want to learn within a unit of study. And sometimes that might not be what we planned as teachers. And so when we have that wiggle room, we're able to give the kids voice, we're able to offer opportunities for what interests them, which is really true differentiation. And we go from there. If they want to learn about birds and we're studying life cycles and I didn't plan that, we're going outside today, right now. So it's just really exciting work. The teachers are exciting. It really is breathing in this life of why did we go into education, right? And when we see light bulbs pop up on top of our students' heads, I can tell you right now that's what makes us sleep well at night, and we're excited to get through that door the next day. And so we are excited about just beginning this journey right now. We want to thank you for sharing the news right now, also with our staff. And just a list to share with you guys of all the international baccalaureate schools. are at the bottom of this presentation, should you want to look. But there are 0 in Lake County. And if it's not now, then when? And if it's not us, then who? It's Waukegan students. That's it. And so just to let you know, thank you all, and just to let you know, our next steps are really to go slow to go fast. We need to take the time to really think about what standards are at the right time within the right unit. It is all about professionally developing our staff and also our kids. It's going to take time to build in these processes, again, as a framework. And so these are some of our next steps just across next year. But like we said, this is a journey of 2, and some schools, it's even 4 years. So we're going to go slow. We're going to be here to share with you along the way. And like I said in the last slide, be prepared for students to be reaching out, especially from Whittier. And we just really want to celebrate this opportunity for all of our kids. Thank you.
I just want to state that we had talked about bringing an IB school my first year being a superintendent. It was one of our goals, and I know it was very heavy on Mr. Riddle's heart. And so I think he asked me about a year and a half ago, where's that IB school? So it's here, Mr. Riddle.
Okay, well, there it is.
First in
Okay.
Lake County. Congratulations, Ms. Jennifer Rice.
Thank you.
Sanchez. Your staff did an
Thank you,
excellent job.
all staff. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that presentation, and we're excited for the work happening over at Whittier. With that, we're going to have item 6C, the 21st Century Community Learning Centers Grant.
Dr. Arnault, do you want to brief us on this?
Is Ms. Tate here? I don't. We had it listed as an information item. Ms. Tate has worked tirelessly on this goal in the framework presentation still. On this presentation to show with the board this evening about the district's intent to apply for the 21st Century Learning Grant this year. One of the requirements to submit our proposal, which is due on the 24th, is that we have to publicly share the information with the board and the public of our intent to apply. So that's essentially what this presentation is just giving you guys the information of our intent to apply for this grant. If you slide up, you can see some of the program specifics that are on here. The grant specifically targets schools that are in the targeted designation or underperforming areas. We are requesting $600,000 for each of the 5 years. We have $150,000 per site, so we have 4 sites that we've targeted for this grant. And very similar to programs that we've had here in the past, we're providing academic opportunities for students as well as enrichment opportunities for students after school. The program within the 4 schools will serve approximately 400 elementary and middle school students in grades 3 through 8. There's no matching or in-kind costs required of the district. The expected number of awards nationally is 100. The application deadline is 28th. Sorry, I thought it was 24th, 28th. And we should know within 90 days after submitting the proposal whether or not we've been approved. It'll be Monday through Thursday. It's going to be 14 hours per week for 28 weeks after school. So whenever the school's end of day is, there'd be time 3 hours after school each day for students to participate in some of these example activities that you see here. Homework help, tutoring, team sports, theater, cultural arts, dance, art, music, drama, and STEM. There's also a parent and family component as well, where we can provide ESL classes to parents, technology classes, workshops around academics, family field trips, etc. What does the grant pay for? There's a program director that we can hire at the district level to oversee the grant, as well as site coordinators at each of the sites that we've identified. It'll pay for, obviously, teachers that do the after-school programming, any other staff that do help with the after-school programming as well, security, other partners that we may partner with throughout the process. There's snacks that are involved for the students, PD, supplies, materials, busing, and there's an external evaluator cost as well. These are the 4 sites that have been identified as being recipients if we are awarded the grant. It'd be Carmen, Clearview, Jack Benny, and Lyon. We had some meetings with those principals, make them aware of what, they're all on board to participate in this opportunity. And then these are some partners that have been, potential partners that have been identified for the grant as well, that we will be working with. And this can change, the list of partners can change depending on relationships that the schools currently have, but they gave us some examples of ones that they're currently partnering with as well. My apologies, I didn't expect to present on this, and I actually requested Ms. Tate not to come to present on it because it was an information item, so I didn't think there was going to be a presentation on it. So Ms. Tate probably could have done this presentation much more justice than I did, but this is our intent to apply and kind of a breakdown of what that application looks like that we'll be submitting on before the 28th.
Ms. Anna?
So we're going to be the fiscal agent for this grant?
Correct. All the responsibilities of the grant will fall on the district.
Okay, because we have had the 21st Century Grant for a long time.
Yep.
And only last couple years, we have not been the fiscal agents, which is above me, and I don't know why. But we were, I just want to make sure that we are the fiscal agent, therefore we have control over how the grant money is going to be dispensed and how it's going to be used where and that type of thing.
100%. Ms. Tate will be working with the principals to submit, create a budget. All the reporting for the grant, the expenditure reports, the periodic reports, those will all be handled at the district level as well. And that all flows right to ISB. So we will be the primary fiscal agent and reporting agent for the grant.
Good. I'm glad that we now have it back in our district.
Well, we don't got it yet. We got fingers crossed.
Yeah, we're submitting the proposal.
Ms. Tate gets it, because we know she's gotten it before, and we did, as Ms. Hannah mentioned, had it for a long time. We did not have it when I believe the superintendent came in, but there was a partner agency that applied on our behalf. But as we all know and have talked about, there were issues and concerns, and we didn't have a lot of say in how things were done. I know that it's always, these grants are awesome, just for the Board of Education, right? And Ms. Tate, I'm not Ms. Tate, Ms. Pope can speak to it, is if we get it, be prepared. There's a lot of times we have to front the money while we wait for reimbursement. And so that's another benefit of us doing it in district. But thank you, Dr. Nault. Thank you, Ms. Hannah. What I'm going to ask for then is a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Riddle. Second by Ms. Wozniak. Any comments or questions? All in favor signify with aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, meeting is adjourned. We will be back in, I say, give us like 5 minutes to keep going with capital improvement. return to their seats so we can keep moving with our next agenda item.
I'm ready.
All right, I would like to call to order the May 18, 2021 Waukegan Public School Operational Services Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. McBride?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Here.
Mr. Riddle?
Present.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Present.
Ms. Leguizamo? Present. And Ms. Gonzalez?
Here.
All right, we do have all board members present. As I mentioned, let's go to item 3A, approval of the meeting minutes for April 20th, 2021. But before we proceed, we talk all the time about mental health in our community. We also talk about some of the ways that COVID has impacted our students. And unfortunately, this is not the first time, and I fear it won't be the last, that we have actually lost a student of our school. And so I would like to just very briefly take a moment of silence in honor of that student, as well as all of the students who we've lost during this pandemic. Thank you so much. And I know the superintendent and staff is working to support the family during this time, as well as our school community. With that, we have a lot of information items. All of those things have been there. They've been presented. If there's anything specific that Deputy Moulton would like to speak to or presentations, we can go to those items as you see fit.
Thank you.
Did I approve the minutes? I did not.
Oh.
So 3A, approval of the meeting minutes for April 20th, 2021, Operational Services Committee meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Wozniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Riddle. Any comments, corrections to the minutes? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Ms. Callahan Wozniak?
Yes.
Mr. Ewing?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Ms. Leguizamo?
Yes.
Mr. McBride?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Pass.
All right, minutes are approved. And so as I mentioned, Mr. Deputy Moulton, be up to you to bounce around. If, I know they've all been presented. They all have attachments, which I love. So I don't have any questions, but if there are things you want to present on, and then if board members have questions, we can go there.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Good evening again, everybody, board members, superintendent, staff, and community members. So we do have several informational items on the agenda for you this evening. I did want to make note that item 5A is actually not a current item. We wanted to bring that forward. That is the women's restroom at Washington campus. This actually came up right before COVID started, very early in the spring of 2020. We addressed that work. We've discussed this particular project where we had to replace the floor, basically a real rebuild from top to bottom. We wanted to bring that forward because we could not locate on previous board agendas where we requested board approval for this action. So we're just bringing it back to ensure that we're following procedure. That project was completed, and we did share that and present it in the summer 2020 capital improvements. We have several capital improvements under information for possible discussion and future action. We do have several engineers and architects in the room if there are any specific questions, as well as Mr. Kruckerberg and Ms. Polk and the finance team. As we're going through this process, you'll note that there are some prices that are not included in some of the projects because the bid openings haven't occurred. One is occurring next Tuesday, May 25th. There are also some projects that we plan to bring forward at a future date, a near future date, that we did not have enough information on this evening. So we're going to have to go through and we're going to vet these, but we wanted to bring the information we had to date so you could see the items and the projects that we're looking at and some of the costs involved. So when we do bring them forward for recommendation in the future, you're aware of the specifics. Again, we do have the designer firms, engineering firms, and architects in the audience this evening if there are any specific scope-related questions related to capital improvements. Yes, Ms. Hannah.
And you know I'm familiar with the bid process, and building of the specs and all of that, Mr. Moulton. I'm just wondering, what did these projects, were they publicly put out there for all eligible contractors to bid on? Or were there selective companies that bid it on these projects?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hannah. So all of these projects were publicly bid. There were opportunities for any bidders to provide us pricing based on the specifications that were provided. We do have publications for the items that have been bid and open to date. Specifications in the publications in the newspaper with the date ranges attached to the agenda items this evening.
So are we still kind of partnering with our local contractors to make sure that they have an opportunity for these jobs?
Yes, all of our local contractors have an opportunity, either as a general contractor or a subcontractor. I do want to remind the board that earlier this year we did provide a local contractor workshop. We did it via Zoom this year. This was before we reopened our doors. But we did provide that, and we have done that in the past, where we go through and we talk about all of the requirements that a contractor needs to meet and things they can anticipate seeing when we post our projects for public bidding.
Hi, Mr. Moon. I saw on the agenda that the advertisements are made through the Chicago Tribune for 3 days for some of these bids. Is it a requirement just for advertisement to be those 3 days, or can it go longer? What determines that?
Yeah, so those are the requirements. We do have, Ms. Jimerson, if you want to come up and address the posting requirements, please.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, community. Good evening, Superintendent Placencia. So we can't, I feel like I'm echoing. We can post for as long as the board is interested. When I first started, we posted for almost the duration that the bid was out, but it can be cost prohibitive depending on how much, not cost prohibitive, but it adds an extra $2,000 to the project cost depending on how long we have the bid open. So about 15 months or so in, we decided to do 3 days for each bid, just to standardize.
At these, it was only like 2 days that they were, that it said they were posted. On one of the, I don't know, I can't, let me just get to it. Let me just pick one that I was looking at. 8 schools. No, that's the 1.5 million. Anyway, there was, oh yeah, this one right here. Advertisement was posted from, go back. Advertisement was posted from April 27th to April 29th.
That would be April 27, 28, 29.
Okay, so that's 4 days?
That's
three days, and so is that standard? I mean, wouldn't it be, I'm asking like her, wouldn't it be longer?
If the board would like us to post longer, we can.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Ms. Jimerson.
If the board would like us to post longer, that's certainly something that's within our power to do. We went to 3 days just because the ads would change from $300 for a relatively short ad to $2,000 for an ad that was out for 15, 20 days. So for example, there are some projects that we get out 15 days, and there are some projects that we get out a month ahead of time, depending on the architects and the project, and that creates a lot of variability in the cost.
Okay. The reason for my inquiry is because I've talked to a couple contractors that said they weren't even aware that these jobs were even happening. And so I just want to make sure that we are not forgetting our local contractors, that we're not forgetting our minority contractors, our lady contractors, our lady subcontractors. Because we're using monies, okay, that is number one, taxpayer money, government money, and we need to make sure that we stay within the guidelines of those specific items that keep us with our money. Okay, and so just want to make that known. And Mr. Moten, I'm sure you understand what I'm speaking about.
No, thank you, Ms. Hannah. We do appreciate those comments, and as Ms. Jimerson mentioned, this is the form, the timeline that we have been using. If there is a desire to change that, we'll certainly take those recommendations and discuss them with the superintendent. We have been as diligent as possible in this process, and again, we've provided opportunities for local education, for our local contractors to go through these exercises so they know where to find the information, what documentation is involved, what are the requirements for them to submit for public education work from a capital improvement standpoint.
Mr. Riddle.
I have two questions. One is regarding the buried fuel tank. That's item G. You're going to replace it, not only pull the old one out, but replace it. And my question on that is simply, what's the expected life of a fuel tank? And since, some organizations are moving to electric vehicles, I see the cost of that is $167,000 or so. Are we going to get our money's worth with that fuel tank? Are we going to need to pull it out before its life has expired, with possibly moving to electric vehicles? I'm just wondering if it's practical, or would we be better off using a local distributor and getting a good price for gasoline and not, having to just pull that tank out and not put a new one in there?
Sure.
That's my first question.
Okay. Sure. So
that's the tank at Buttrick Street, at the warehouse.
Yes, that is at the warehouse at 2228 North Buttrick. For the life expectancy and the cost analysis, we'll provide that information. But I do want to say that this buried fuel tank at the warehouse is the only buried fuel tank we have in the district. All of the district vehicles utilize this, as well as the activity buses. Our leased vehicles can use it. So we want to make sure that this is available and doesn't have intermittent outages. This fuel system that we have in place has had sporadic problems over several years. It particularly exposes itself when we need to fuel up on a frequent basis during the winter season when we're plowing. So to have that resource local and the volume of gasoline that we purchase, it does make it advantageous to us with the size of the oil tank we have versus going to a retail or a local supplier. But we'll look at the cost analysis and provide that, because that is one of the items where we only had one response for that bid.
Okay. My other question on that would be, is there a possibility, I saw the cost is not included if indeed that old tank has leaked? Do we have any idea if the tank has leaked into the ground? Could there be added cost if indeed have we thought the tank has been leaking at all into the ground? Because then we'd have to remediate that, dig out some of that ground and remediate it. Do we think it's been leaking, or it's not leaking?
The current tank you're referencing,
tank
Mr. Riddle?
there, yeah.
Mr. Kirkeberg, you want to take that?
Because I saw the cost analysis said, that could be extra if indeed it's leaked into the ground.
Sure.
Other one? Sorry, or let her sanitize it, either way. Thanks, sir.
Good evening, distinguished board members, superintendent. In answer to your question about the existing fuel tank, we won't know if it has previously leaked into the surrounding ground until we start digging up the old one. We do know that the pump and the delivery system is worn out and has failed us when we needed it. It's really not acceptable for us to be in a position where we have 25 or 26 trucks snow plowing on a Sunday night in a blizzard and not be able to get fuel for them. So this is an item that we find critical to our operations.
Right, okay.
If we find that it's leaking, we'll
You'll
have to deal with the remediation of the soil at that point.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Okay, that explains the need for it. My other question, my last one, was regarding the lease of the driver's ed vehicle. I heard that, I saw that that's being used currently by our food service. And then they're going to release that vehicle. Are we going to need that vehicle? Is it going to be available? Because I heard, that the increased use this summer for driver's ed vehicles. So that was item I.
Yes, that is item 5I. So yes, that'll be available for our driver's ed. That's a 2021 Toyota Camry. We have 4 driver's ed vehicles. This would be the 4th. Every 3 years, the lease that you see attached to the agenda item is standard, the 3-year lease. So we want to renew that to ensure that's available for this summer.
It will be available for
Yes.
summer use, and then it will go back afterwards. Okay.
Available for use in June.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had, Board President.
Just a question. How many gallons of gas do that tank hold?
5,000.
5,000 gallon tank.
And how do we use that? How much do we go through a year from the winter to the summer?
So the regular fill-up rate, we're looking at monthly fill-ups where we get a service delivery of a certain amount of gas. We track how much is entered into the tank to get to that 5,000. But we use it enough to warrant a monthly fuel truck delivery.
And I guess I don't have a document. Was there how much is it monthly cost? Especially now the gas is going up. But what was it even before the gas going up? Just an average number.
Mr. McBride, we'll need to follow up with you on the current gas price number just to ensure that we're speaking accurately. I don't know if Mr. Kruckenberg has that memorized. But the frequency that we get it refilled is monthly. We do see sporadic uses and higher rates of usage during the wintertime because we use the vehicles around the clock to plow snow. So we do get a monthly fill up for that service.
No, I just asked the question because normally, I know Ocean Oil, they shut down. We were using them, but now pretty much everybody getting fuel out of Wisconsin. And I guess I just kind of was trying to figure out basically what the monthly cost that we were spending on the average, regardless driver's ed, maintenance department, in general, the services that we provide, the cars and vehicles and trucks and stuff we use. I was just trying to get a ballpark figure how much we were spending on with fill-ups on a monthly basis.
Sure. So we'll come back with analysis for the board. What I will say is that previously when we ran that analysis, the service that we receive for the bulk fill-ups was significantly less than if we sent staff to the pumps, either at Ocean Oil on Highway 41 or at a local retailer. Similar to our gas distribution and our utilities, significantly less when we buy in bulk as a public entity versus buying directly.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. Ms. Wozniak.
Back to this tank thing. It says it's going to be 24 to 30 weeks before we get this. That puts us right back into Christmas and snow plowing time and stuff. And do we anticipate problems in the 24 to 30 weeks till we get it? With our pump system?
Problems with the system going down during that time? It is highly possible and likely. Mr. Kruckenberg, do you want to say anything about that?
Only that we have backup plans for what we do when the system goes down, and we'll continue to use those. When we know that we're doing the replacement and that our system will be out of service, we'll try to lock down additional alternatives so that we have them available to us at night and on weekends,
Okay, thank you.
which is when we really need it.
Thank you, Mr. Covenbert. Ms. Laguzava.
Mr. Moulton, so I just want to confirm for any of the fixtures, bathroom fixtures, and that is the sinks and toilets, will both of those items be touchless or just the faucets?
So those are the models that we're going to and the specifications is, okay, if you could come on up. So we're going to speak a little bit to the specifications because I know when we did the women's restroom at Washington campus, we kind of maintained a model for fixtures within our restrooms moving forward.
Yeah, so both the toilet flush valve and the sink faucets will be touchless based on the district standard that we've started using.
That is great to hear.
Yes, and I would also like to add that the restrooms that we have noted on these agenda items to bring to the board's recollection, $1 million we received from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity that we're putting towards updating restrooms through our district. So the restrooms that you see within the scope of work on the agenda item you referenced are the first wave. We do want to open up those bids. Those bids haven't been opened to see where we are from a unit cost standpoint, so we can expand that program. But it's our goal that $1 million is going to kickstart a bathroom renovation program throughout the district that will take school by school with a goal in short order, 2 to 3 years hopefully, and we'll see how the prices shake out, but where we can say all the restrooms in district have been renovated to be modernized.
Thank you. And the second question I have is related to the high school PE lockers. And I'd just like to confirm that the bid includes that the middle lockers will be securely and affixed to the flooring so that it is close to impossible to knock over. Just wanted to get that clarification.
Yes. Sorry I didn't introduce myself the first time. My name is Andy Phelps with STR Partners. Thank you for having us here, board members and superintendent. The lockers, yes, will be securely fastened to the floors and bases so that they cannot be moved.
Is there a particular, when you say like a weight rate, like a PSI of a sort, to understand like this much amount of force would be needed to knock those lockers down? Just so that you know, it happens, unfortunately, and I just want to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore.
I don't have the specific numbers, but in our specifications, we do specify that there are certain national standards that have to be met, and so those will be included in that, and we'll definitely make sure that the contractors are following those anchoring requirements for the lockers.
Mr. Riddle.
I would just piggyback on what she said. Because this is a school, or because these our school bathrooms are replacing, I've seen some, bathrooms that are equipped, with fairly flimsy stalls and things, and others that are, quite rugged for schools with, made with really heavy, sometimes with that rubberized, recycled rubber, very, it's heavy material, so that it's going to stand up to the abuse that it may get in a school.
Yeah, so we actually have two toilet partition types in the bids. One is a solid plastic partition, which is about an inch thick and quite tough. The other is a phenolic resin panel that is a little bit thinner. It's like 3/4 of an inch, and also vandal and graffiti resistant.
Good to know you're considering that, because otherwise the metal ones get dented and look very bad in a few years if you have them in the schools. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I thought we were going to move towards using the stalls that have, is it anti-scratch, anti-graffiti? It's more, you know which ones I'm talking about, right? Is that
both the plastic ones and the phenolic resin are both scratch resistant and graffiti resistant for easy. They might be able to write on, but they wipe off fairly easily with standard cleaning chemicals, even permanent markers and such.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Ms. Wozniak and then Ms. Hannah.
I noticed that we're discontinuing the meal service plan distribution program. Have we made a concerted effort to announce that to everybody because it's ending at the end of the month? It's a couple weeks.
So thank you for asking that question. So we wanted to bring that information forward. Mr. White, if you could click on item, which item is it?
6D.
6D. If you could click on item 6D. So we wanted to bring this information forward this evening. We are going to make concerted efforts to communicate this out. Now, currently with our meal distribution program, we're giving out 7 days worth of meals, each distribution. So 1 week worth of meals. So as 6D under information, adjustments to meal distribution program. So we wanted to bring this forward this evening because with summer school being in person, we're going to need the buses to transport students. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do both. So this is an information item for this evening. We're going to provide communication to our parents of this change. As you can see on the screen, we're going to maintain the drive-through service at Brookside campus every Thursday from 11 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And we're going to be having the summer meal program at all summer school sites. So that will be for, we'll be doing the meals for the students as well as meals for the community for them to come in as we've done in summers prior to COVID. So we're providing the drive-through option of the 7 meals, and we're hosting at all summer school sites, which is our elementary schools, our high school campuses, and 9 of our elementary schools and all of our middle school campuses. So majority of schools in district will have meals available to community as well as students with the drive-through service.
We need to get this information out to everybody as soon as possible and reiterate it every way we can.
Ms. Hannah?
Yeah, my next question is regarding 5C in terms of window replacements at Glenwood, Oakdale, McCall, Clark, and Greenwood. Now, I am confused at this point because the window replacements took place at Glenwood, or is there something that I'm missing? Mr. Moulton.
Is Gaspar here this evening? Go ahead.
Excuse me?
Just waiting for him to come to the microphone.
Oh.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board, superintendent and the community. My name is Gaspar Petrello. I'm with Arcon Associates. To answer your question, we did replace windows last year. They were at a different portion of the building, so now we're addressing another portion of the building, original windows to the school.
At Glenwood?
At Glenwood and Oakdale as well.
Okay, and so those are the, if I'm not mistaken, those are those, the round?
Yes, call them the pods, or the
Yeah,
hexagonal shaped portion of the building. That was last year.
That was last year?
Correct.
So this year, you're just kind of going?
There's linear wings of the building, older parts of the building. Those are what we are addressing this year.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure, okay, that that was correct and I was reading it correctly.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Lagzaba?
Mr. Moulton, overall, is this within the 10 mil that we allocated for this year, or do we still have more projects coming along? Just trying to understand financially where we sit with just the list of these projects.
Sure, excellent question. So we do have some other things that are being evaluated currently. Based on the market, the trends we've seen with some of these prices, we are going to have some decisions to make. So the operations, purchasing, Ms. Polk's office, we all sit down and we look at these closely. We are providing this information this evening so that you're aware that we are following up on items that the Capital Improvement Plan, the Capital Improvement Committee identified for this year. And if we get to a point where prioritization is needed to stay within the allocated budget, or other requests are made to modify that budget, we'll bring that forward. We're not going to do that without the input of all stakeholders. But again, we wanted to bring this forward because, as you can see, we have several items here that have been published. We have several items we're getting bids on. We have several items that we have yet to open bids on, and we want to make sure, whether it's windows, asbestos abatement, mechanical improvements, we want to make sure that we're working within our financial means, and making the supportive recommendations so that we are not negatively impacting other programs in the district.
And I'm hoping by the end of this operations meeting, if you can just kind of say for the audience and maybe even those on the internet, if they can, where they can go to see these bids, if there's a particular website or particular meetings, just anything you can give as a quick guidance, so for any of those that are viewing can hear that. Appreciate that, Mr. Moten.
Thank you.
I have a question. Okay, we have life safety projects that need to be completed. I'm not sure at this point where we are in completion of our life safety mandates that need to be taken care of in our district. And so I guess my question is, with these items here, and Ms. Leguizamo, I apologize if I am being redundant, but are these items included in our life safety mandates that we need to be taken care of?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hanna. We incorporated life safety items, A, B, and C priorities within our capital improvement plan. The A items from the 2016 10-year life safety survey, we addressed very quickly. Through the capital improvement plan, we combine items from A, B, and C priorities because the C priorities are recommendations that could potentially become A priorities at the next 10-year survey cycle. So we are addressing a lot of scope items within the A, B, and C priorities, primarily the B and C priorities, through the projects that were identified on the capital improvement plan and through this process.
And so I guess that brings me to, with the concurrence of the board, if we could have a written or documented document to show us where we are in the process of our life safety mandates, where we are in terms of what we've done, where we are, our timeline that we're working within.
Deputy Moten, so that's something that can easily be provided, correct?
Yes, we can provide the information to the superintendent for distribution.
Thank you, Mr. Moten. All right, only thing I have, or did you have a question? Anybody else? So if we could speak to item very briefly, 5J, the approval for the 3-year for those who may be participating online.
Sure. So 5J, we had some verbiage changes that were noted on the second page of the attached calendar. We came to the board previously in February to approve the 3-year calendar after meeting with the calendar committee. We did, when we built the calendars within the school system, we did note some items that needed verbiage changes, and they're listed here. 3 specific items. The first page, and Mr. White, I don't know if you have the ability to open the attachment. The first page notes the calendar days laid out in the 12-month period with certain highlight color codes. This page, we're not changing any dates. What we're changing and updating to match this page are 3 items in the verbiage on the second page as it relates to winter break and 2 district closed days. And here, I have it here. So we changed the district verbiage for winter break from December 22nd to January 5th. I'm sorry, from December 21st to January 5th to December 22nd and January 5th. The April 15th, 2022 date read originally as a district closed day. Now it reads as Good Friday district closed. And then the October 22nd, 2021 date went from saying schools closed to schools closed. 12-month WPSS and district is in session.
Perfect. Just wanted that clarification for those who may be watching online. And if we can get the agenda back up.
I just want to say I definitely like that they're adding in that the students are not in attendance, because I think sometimes it got confusing for a few families if students were in attendance or not, based off of the description of that day. Thank you for that.
Thank you. With that, if there are no further questions, community, I'd like for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Wozniak, second by Mr. McBride. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned.